ref. That she got the ball. Good afternoon, Tottenham fans worldwide, and welcome back to the Irish Hotspur. And we have come with breaking news as Ange Postecoglou has been sacked by Tottenham Hotspur. We've got a panel with us already. Jack's at a graduation right now, so he might join later on if he's back in time. I don't quite know. We've got Kate, Jimbo, we've got Jose, and we've also got Soren here to share their thoughts. Just a few updates to run through you with. We've got the statement from Tottenham Hotspur, statement from Ange Postecoglou, and then also reported by the Telegraph that Scott Munn is set to lead the departure zone next. He's also out the door, and also Sky Sports are reporting that Thomas Frank is now the front runner for the job. So we've got plenty to discuss this evening. We will start by going through Tottenham Hotspur's statement. Let me just try and make that big enough for everybody to be able to see. That'll do. And they have gone following a review of performances, and after significant reflection, the club can announce that Ange Postecoglou has been relieved of his duties. Ange joined us from Celtic in the summer of 2023 and oversaw a period of change on the pitch, returning us to the attacking brand of football that has traditionally been associated with this club, while writing a new chapter in our history by leading us to the UEFA Cup glory in Bilbao last month, an achievement that will live with us all forever. We are extremely grateful to Ange for his commitment and contribution during his 2 years at the club. Ange will always be remembered as only the third manager in our history to deliver a European trophy, alongside legendary figures Bill Nicholson and Keith Birkinshaw. However, the board have unanimously concluded that it is in the best interest of the club for a change to take place. Following a positive start to the 23-24 campaign, we recorded 78 points from the last 66 Premier League games. This culminated in a worst ever Premier League finish last season. At times, there were extenuating circumstances, injuries, and then a decision to prioritise our European campaign. Whilst winning the Europa League this season ranks as one of the club's greatest moments, we cannot base our decision on emotions aligned to this triumph. It is crucial that we are able to compete on multiple fronts and believe a change of approach will give us the strongest chance for the coming season and beyond. This has been one of the toughest decisions we've had to make, and is not a decision that we have taken lightly, nor one we have rushed to conclude. We have made what we believe is the right decision to give us the best chance of success going forward, not the easy decision. We have a talented young squad, and Ange has given us a great platform to build upon. We should like to express our gratitude to him. We wish him well for the future. He will always be welcome back to our home. News on the appointment of a new head coach will be announced in due course. So first of all, look, we'll go through the panel. We'll get their initial reactions to the news, and then I'll bring up Ange Postecoglou's statement, and then questions around what direction next, what manager are people looking at, and stuff like that. We will start with Soren. Soren was the first one that got back to me and said yes, and then we'll go to Kate and Jimbo, and then Jose. Soren, what's your reaction to the news? Ange Postecoglou has been sacked by Tottenham. Right choice or wrong choice?
Absolutely the wrong choice.
Why?
I was buzzing today. It's my birthday. Everything was going really good today.
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday!
Thank you. Look, we've waited. 1984 was the last European trophy. 2008 was the last domestic trophy. We've just won a European Cup, and more than half the fan base was crying out for a cup and didn't care about league position. And he promised us a cup. He delivered a cup, and we go sacking. What sort of a club does this? And I'm gobsmacked with it. I mean, we kind of knew it was coming.
The longer they were leaving it, Soren, the more days, they could have clarified that, in the program, the last game of the season. I think the longer it went on, I was on Last Word on Spurs last night, and Ricky Sack said to me, "What's your gut feeling?" And I said, "Look, the longer it's gone on, it's clear they're going in a different direction. It's inevitable." So, I think many people probably saw the writing on the wall that it was coming. But, I think where the argument comes in, was it the right or wrong decision? Now, to your point, we wanted trophies. He's delivered that. But it seems like the club could not overlook the league for him.
I get it. I mean, look, that I've always said top four is priority for me. I'm one of those that I want to see my club playing in Champions League. But Jesus Christ, we've just won the biggest trophy that we've won since 1984, and I don't know. It just feels as though it was all for nothing. You know, look, we sat here, and me, you, and Jack all sat here, and I said to you, look, even if he wins, I still think he'll go.
Yeah.
But the reality of him actually going, it's a sad day. It really is a sad day for Tottenham Hotspur. And look, although, I mean, I've already seen people on Twitter and, you know, on other streams already gloating the fact that they said he would be gone and blah, blah, blah. Well, I hope you're glad, you know, I hope you get what you wanted. And we will not win another trophy now for a long time, because it's proven this club is all about top four, full stop. And I mean, me and Jimbo have been joking for the last year, you know, the quad is on, the triple is on, the double is on, the European Cup is on. Well, the quad is off now. The quad is definitely off now for next year, because we will now get a manager and he will be told it's top four. And the cups will never be prioritised again for a long, long time. And I hope the fans that, you know, hounded our most successful manager for 40 odd years are happy. I hope they are.
Well, look, it really depends on what sort of name they bring in. I think if they bring in a name of gravitas, that alleviates all the concerns that people had around. Well, look, if it is, I think then we are sort of setting ourselves up when we're going into Champions League for a whole reset yet again, you know. And my hope is that it is a name of gravitas, and I hope that it alleviates the concerns that others had around Ange, but also answers the questions that I had around Ange Postecoglou. You know, a lot of the questions were, can this guy demonstrate over the course of one season that he can compete on multiple fronts? Well, that's, you know, I need a name of gravitas that has been there, done that, and proven that to a large extent to say, yeah, you know, maybe we have made the right decision. If we do end up at like a Marco Silva or Thomas Frank, look, I'll give the next manager a chance regardless. But if we do end up at one of them, it almost feels like we're going into next season doing trial and error again. And that's where my big concern comes around. I think the club had a massive opportunity to use this little mini window right now to deliver a signing and wet people's lips for next season. Instead, we're going around just in circles and circles. You know, the remit was to deliver trophies and get Champions League football. He's delivered that. And then he's walked out the door. But look, let's go around to Jim. Let's get Kate and let's get Jose. Let's get their initial thoughts as well. And we'll expand on this further. I mean, Jimbo, Kate, how are we feeling, guys?
Well, you go, Kate.
Look, I'm gutted for Ange, because I think he deserved to start the season with us. But at the same time, there's kind of an inevitability about it. You can't throw the league and say we dismissed the league since February when you've got season ticket holders paying thousands of pounds to go and watch league games and watching 22 defeats. You know, that is an absolute disgrace. It all depends, like you say, Dave, on who they bring in. If we get rid of him and we bring in Thomas Frank, for me, he's absolutely no better than Ange Postecoglou in the fact that he's never won anything. You know, he's at Brentford. We don't know what he can do. It's a sideways step for me rather than a forward step. But look, in a way, part of me is relieved, because I'm sick to death of turning YouTube on every day and seeing people slate this guy. I can't stand it, Dave. The disrespect put on this man's name. I get it. The league form was terrible, but this guy's been called a clown, a fraud, a this, a that. I've been told I'm a hypocrite. I've been told I'm embarrassing. I've been told I'm pathetic for saying that he deserves a chance. Do you know what I mean? This has been the most divisive manager that in my 45 years of supporting this club, or whatever it is, 43 years, I've never known a manager to cause so much division in the fan base. So there's a bit of relief on that side, but look, I'm not surprised. I think no matter what, I agree with Soren. He bought us that trophy. He's given me memories that I've waited so long for and that I will cherish forever. But the league is your bread and butter. And if you're losing that many games, I just didn't see that he would survive it. I said to Jim the other day, he said he thinks he'll stay. I said I think he'll get sacked. And
okay, I ask the season ticket holders if they'd swap losing them 22 games to give up that cup. And I tell you what, you won't find many that would give it up.
Yeah, so disgrace has been sacked.
Look, it's an absolute disgrace he's been sacked. A man's bought us a trophy. In 40 years, we've been waiting to win that trophy again. He's brought it, got us into the Champions League. He earned the right to take us into next season, right? There's no loyalty anywhere anymore. Loyalty was out the window. You know, he should have been allowed to take us into next season. and see if he'd learnt from his mistakes this season. Well, now we wait, right? Say we get Frank, right? Who's to say Frank's going to? He's got to go in now, and he's got to hit the ground running. Because if he doesn't hit the ground running, there's going to be an uproar. At least Ange knew the players, right? He knew the mistakes he'd made, and we could have kicked on from there. But now we've got a new guy, and everybody's saying Saka. Well, so many people said Saka, Ange are bringing a new one. Who says he's going to hit the ground running? We don't know that. We could be back in the same position of losing like 7 out of 10 games or something.
Yeah, but Jimbo, do you honestly think that by bringing in someone else, he's going to be as bad in the league as Ange? Because I don't.
But you're looking at this season. Next season's a different season, right? The players have learned a lot. These young players that will first come in, right, that they needed time to bed in, have bed in now, right? Ange has bed into the Premiership, and he's learned. He's not an idiot, Kate. He would have learned a lot of lessons from this season, right?
Do you know what it is?
He could have took us into next season, right? And we could have hit the ground running with the man.
The thing is, Jim, okay, how many times have we been told on channels like this that the only way to measure success is by a cup? Well, we've actually won a cup. So isn't that the success that we've been looking for? I mean, look, I agree with you. The Premiership has been a disaster. But let's not forget, all those people that were calling him a clown and said he's never managed in a proper league, he's never won a proper cup, he's never been in a proper competition. Well, he has now. He has managed a big team. He has won a cup, and he has done well. Yes, the league form has been shocking, but like Jim's just said, what's to say it might not have worked next season? What's to say, if we actually went out and backed him with some top-class players, that he couldn't deliver a little bit more? But look, it's over now.
I do think, from the fans' perspective, maybe, he was a victim of maybe fans moving the goalposts. I do agree with that in terms of what you're saying. Last season when he went out to Fulham in the Carabao Cup after making all the changes, everyone was sitting there moaning, what about trophies? We should prioritise them. Then he's done that this season. And, now everyone's reverting back to the league. I fully understand. But what I will say is, hopefully now coming out of this, because even before Ange got here, there was a narrative that we could sacrifice this competition for that competition. Hopefully now, even with Ange gone, that everyone now says no. The acceptable bar is competing on all four fronts, not picking and choosing. We are a massive football club. I also just think, the fact that the league, the amount of games we've lost, which, the club will be losing revenue because people were giving up their tickets in droves, putting them on third-party sites to sell them, etc. It was getting to the point where Wolves and Liverpool fans were sitting in the big wall. That's how bad it was getting, so that would have influenced their decision. I also think the fact that he was never going to recover with the media, even delivering Europa League, they were still on his case, on reasons why he should be sacked and everything else. You never, if the media have a hard on for you, you're never ever going to recover. They're never ever going to forget, and they were just going to wait for the next time for you to slip up and go at you again. And I also think that influenced the club's decision. And to be honest with you, I think the club probably would have sacked them around December, January time, only that no other manager would have walked in here with the amount of injuries and the chaos that the club was in. So they were always going to wait towards the end of the season. And him getting to the Europa League final gave him that stay of execution. And look, fair play to the guy. He's delivered a trophy at Tottenham Hotspur. My first trophy in 17 years, first European Cup in 41 years. And for the first time in my life, I got to experience a parade down that high road that woke everybody up. 250,000 people there. Chelsea wouldn't get that. Arsenal wouldn't get that. It was an absolute massive parade. And hopefully now it's woken the whole fan base up and says, this is a massive club. 8 trophies is the expectations. No one should ever fall below that. But realistically, I think the biggest thing is he switched up the style of play towards the end of the season. He was known for his attacking football. And look, I do sympathise with him to a certain degree. I've always maintained I don't think this squad is good enough to compete on multiple fronts, and I do think it lacks a lot of quality. We've got a lot of young players, and with that becomes mistakes. And at this level, they are costly. I feel with Ange do that for a certain degree. But at the end of the day, and I've always said this, I've always said it with Conte, Jose, when people's asked them to change their style of football, once you change, you're always leaving yourself to being sacked because you're going against what you believe in to a large degree. And if you're the board looking at that and going, Well, he's catered, he's caved, he's changed his style of football. He's gone more pragmatic, and everything else. Like, we don't even know what the style of football is going into next season. We don't even know what players we're buying for what style of football. So I think that's ultimately what left him most vulnerable around this decision. The fact that it was always going to be a gamble going into him next season. My whole point was I'd rather take that gamble with him than a Silva, than a Thomas Frank, because the reality is everything that's people's question of Ange Postecoglou, they don't take them boxes with answers either. For me, I'm okay with this if it's a name of gravitas. I just hope we haven't made a mistake. But, Tyler asked the question there not so long ago. If they knew this was going to be the outcome, why not make that decision much earlier so that we can just, because right now we've pissed about in a window deciding where we're going to keep a manager, not where the likes of your Liam Delaps, your Cunhas, your Vertzes, your Frimpongs, they're all making big moves, and we're just sitting here twiddling our thumbs, yet again, not knowing the direction. And what pisses me off about this football club is this is now since Pochettino, the last 5-6 seasons on the trot, regardless whether we've won a trophy or whether we haven't. We're sitting here going into a summer not knowing what the direction is, and that is not good enough from the football club. But sorry, I've said enough. We'll let Jose and Eddie in, and then we'll delve into it deeper. Jose, what's your initial feelings, my man?
Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone's well. For me, I'm going to talk about myself and not about anyone else. But for me, I stuck with Ange to quite late in the day. And I'm going to be brutally honest. I ended up giving up on Ange. I think it's when the Wolves beat us 4-2, and that was back in April time. I just thought to myself, things ain't going to change. At the end of the day, I've seen a roller coaster with Ange. I've seen us go downhill in the sense of results. And for me, I just thought to myself, it's one defeat after another and after another. I'm not looking at Europe, because we were still in Europe then, and I just thought to myself, I'm not sure whether he's going to change. I'm not sure where we're going, in what direction we're going in. And to me, I have to look at myself and say, what did I think the day before the final? Yeah, of course I wanted to win the final, but the day before the final, my thoughts were Ange not to be at the club. We went on to win the trophy. He's given us absolutely a magnificent day, as everyone's alluded to. But my emotion, didn't let my emotions get ahead of me to say, now that he's won a trophy, he should stay. I don't think there was enough evidence for me that he'll change, and that there isn't, or there wasn't, and there still isn't for me enough evidence that he'll change. He bought a trophy in. I think a lot of people didn't give him a chance when he first signed for the club. I think people already had negativity around him, like who is he's a fat Aussie, and I heard all the negativity when he started for us 2 years to the day today, and I don't think people gave him a chance. But I don't think it was the fans that hounded him out. There's other managers we've had in the past who've been hounded out by the support. I don't think the support hounded him out. I just think that the club have looked at this, and somebody's looked at this on a footballing decision, not based on anything else apart from football, and that's why they've come to this decision.
Well, that's what they said. They said they took the emotion of it in the statement, didn't they?
Yeah, but I think they have, and I would have thought they would have done as well, because at the end of the day, there is going to be changes. I said all along, all this season, stuff. It's not just the manager, and I never put it on the manager. I kept calling this club a pizza, saying that everyone ever had a slice of the problem at this club, and for me, it ranged from the board. It was Scott Munn, it was Langer, Ange had a slice of it. The players had a slice of it. The medical team, the coaches. I said all around there was problems, and I said that at the end of the season, we have to do a lessons learned, and we have to look at this season, look at what went right and what went wrong, and address these issues so you don't get these issues going forward. Now, they've gone ahead and made a decision. Yeah, I mean, I knew it was coming, or in my belief, I thought it was coming anyway. However, it doesn't make it any easier on me that it's now happened, because he did deliver us that trophy. But then when you're getting, I mean, everyone shoots, everyone sprays their AK-47 and sprays the bullets and hope one hits. And you've got all these in the nose and everyone saying he's going to be sacked, or now they're leaning towards keeping him. There was a lot of noise around Frank, and there has been for the last couple of weeks. And no one's shutting the noise down with Thomas Frank. Yeah. And yesterday, when did they sign Kelleher from Brentford? When did Brentford sign Kelleher? Was it yesterday?
A couple of days ago.
Right. So when they signed Kelleher, you go to the statement that they've made for Kelleher signing, and the club management, it was the first team coach that made the comments on Kelleher. Thomas Frank, as the manager, makes comments on every signing. So he doesn't have to have a face in front of a camera. It's all written down on paper. So it's a statement that's made, and they put the name against the statement. And to me, seeing that Kelleher was signed and Thomas Frank did not put any statement there, tends to tell me that Tottenham have probably already spoken to him, like some of the people have been saying in the last couple of weeks. But we'll wait and see what happens. I mean, at the end of the day, Tottenham has always been turbulent in my lifetime, whether rightly or wrongly. All I'm going to say is that whether this is negative or positive carnage, I don't know. All I'm going to say to you is to be continued throughout the summer, because it's not just getting a new manager. There's a whole load of other things wrong at Tottenham, and there's a load of other things going on, and they all need to be rectified. So I just say, buckle in and just look at this summer, because this summer there'll be a lot more going on than just a manager.
Just quickly, we'll let Soren bounce out of here. I want to say a happy birthday to you, Soren. You go and enjoy yourself, my man. Anything else you want to say before we let you go, buddy?
I think this just sums Tottenham Hotspur up, doesn't it? It's just a very typical Spursy thing to do. Look, I backed Ange right to the end. He won us a trophy. I said we'd do something. Whoever the next manager is, I'll back him. I don't care who it is. I'm not enamoured for Frank. I think he's got just about the same record as Ange's in the Premiership. So I don't understand why people think he's going to, rip up trees and things like that. But look, whoever it is, I'll back them, and club goes on. It's all about Tottenham Hotspur, and that's my club, and we'll support it till the day I die. Yeah. So, as always, come on, you Spurs, and have a good day, everybody. I'm going to have some cake.
Enjoy your cake and enjoy the rest of your birthday, mate.
See you later.
Yeah, see you later. Bye.
Bye. Do you know, I feel for Soren for a large degree. I've often had birthdays when Tottenham are playing and shit like that, and they've usually ruined them. So I feel Soren for Soren to a large degree. Hopefully he can park that and go and enjoy his day. And look, what I will say to anybody that, is gutted by the decision. At the end of the day, I was here in this situation with Harry Kane, and at the end of the day, the club is still here. I wouldn't say it's moved forward, but it's still here, and it's still going to be here after Ange Postecoglou in the next direction we go in. But to Jose's point, this is where I worry it could go either way, Jose, because, it seems like there's a bit of a power struggle up at boardroom level, if what reports are led to be believed, between Flo Lewis's daughter and Daniel Levy, that there's a bit of a power struggle there. There's a lot of changes going on up there in boardroom. Apparently, they're potentially bringing Paratici back. We're now changing manager. We also have to change up our coaching staff. We also have to, get stuck into that medical department and get that fit for purpose. We also have to buy a lot more quality for the squad in order to compete for Champions League, regardless of who the manager is. No manager's walking in with this squad and competing with a lot of the teams we're expected to compete with on all four fronts this season. So this is a massive overhaul at Tottenham Hotspur, and this can either be benefit Tottenham moving forward, that Joe Lewis's daughter is sick of the old way of doing things, maybe people have got too comfortable and it needs this shake up moving forward, or there's that much to do, we've got ourselves in that much of a muddle, it's almost going to be near impossible to recover from. And that's my big fear. I think it could go either way. I want to take a few chats so that I can get down to the very bottom of the chat, because I am about 3,000 chats behind. So I'm going to take some of these chats, and then we are going to let Eddie in as well and let him have his say. We might have to get the Kleenex at the ready for Eddie. But he did put in a super chat, said our squad was not capable of competing on multiple fronts. We have thrown another manager under the bus. What are we doing? And look, me, Eddie, I've sort of aligned with that view. I said it coming into the start of the season. Many people turned on me actually when I sort of had my opinion on the transfer window, and I said it wasn't good enough to compete on all four fronts and stuff like that. And look, it turned out to be the case, but it's better than 17th in the league. Look, I don't think it's top half better. I think it needs massive investment, but it's better than 17th in the league. However, I don't excuse some of the players as well. We can sit here and blame everything on Postecoglou. The reality is fringe players were given their opportunity in the league come the back end of the season. Many have knocked on manager's door in the past at this football club and bitched and moaned, why am I getting my opportunity? Well, they've got it, and they didn't take it. And at the end of the day, You know, we can sit here and pretend this squad is a lot better than what it is, but we need to deal with reality and demand we get improvements this summer, because if not, reality will smack us in the face very quickly into next season that the quality just isn't there again. But you know, and that's where I do feel for Ange Postecoglou to a large degree. You know, the quality hasn't been there. He had to deal with Harry Kane being sold in the front line, a guy that put so many points on the board. You know, this season, again, you take Son out. You know, what you produced last season, take that out compared to what you offered this season. We're now a club also moving forward without Kane and Son bailing us out in games and being them magic men. So it is a huge, huge concern moving forward. We've got this from Ian Ferguson, member for 38 months. Well, this is going to be level-headed, calm transfer window. Well, never, ever level-headed and calm at Tottenham Hotspur, my man. But big up, Ian Ferguson. Good to see you. Appreciate the longevity of the support. Let me know how you're feeling in the chat about the decision, though, Ian. Big up, Ryan's become a new YouTube member. He must be absolutely celebrating, throwing parties everywhere. It's a shame. Shame you weren't throwing a party for the Europa League trophy, but you are for fans. You're sacking Rhino. But look, you've always said you didn't like him, so you must be happy. Kamikaze did put this in when Soren was here. He says, do you love the manager or the club? Look, at the end of the day, I don't think we should ever get into these stupid debates, because everyone, you know, whether I agree with them or not, I like to think that everybody is coming from the point of view on what they believe is the best for the football club and how they believe is the best route to success. I don't think anyone, or hope not, that no one is sitting there with any, you know, agendas and they just want to be proven right. I do believe that everybody says what they say because the deep root of it is they want what's best for this football club. And he also follows up, says, so Ange, you guys enjoy losing 22 games. Look, and again, I think this was when Soren was here, but look, no one enjoyed losing the 22 games. I mean, look, it got that bad. I had to take a week and a half away as soon as the season ended because my emotions were up here and down here. I've never really experienced a season like it. You know, I'm one of them. I need to be a steady Eddie rather than up and down like that and stuff. No one enjoys it. But where I found things hypocritical is very quickly, as soon as Frank was put forward, everyone got a stiffy for him. And they used the 34 league defeats over 2 seasons to bash around Ange's head, but then didn't tot up how many Frank had over the 2 seasons. And your boy is smart enough to go and do that. And I totted him up. It took me 2 minutes. Straight away, I found out he lost 33 over 2 seasons. So what we're saying, one more is acceptable. And what my whole point is, if we're gonna put these expectations on Ange Postecoglou, then follow them expectations through with names linked. And that way, we will eventually get to a name that will tick the majority of boxes for what we need. But what I'm not prepared to do is anybody but Ange. Marco Silva will not take this club forward, and I don't believe Thomas Frank will either. I need a name of gravitas, someone where I wake up, I said it yesterday or Tuesday, I get a stiffy and I have to go and stroke it out. That's the name I want sort of linked to Tottenham Hotspur. But big up Kamikaze. We've got Dark Sung G says, he needed this season with a better squad for depth and a better medical team to make sure we don't only have 10 senior players for 3 months. What was Levy thinking? Tyler says, Ange sacked Postecoglou. My only question is if you were going to sack him, why wait so long? And I think that's an absolute valid point. We've got Jason Bell, member for 44 months. We're just going to rehire Ange to guarantee a trophy in his second year. Big up Jason Bell. Sadly, that's not going to be the case. It has come to an end. It does look like Marco Silva and Thomas Frank are front runners. Look, I have read and I have been told that they have spoke to Thomas Frank a while ago, which makes me think, and everything that's gone on in Brentford, Flecken has left and Buemo's leaving, you know, to the point that Jose made about, you know, someone else coming out and making a statement around the Kelleher signing and not being Thomas Frank. You know, we already know, I think it's going to cost 9 million, I think is the release clause to pull him out of there. I think the links, you know, will probably be spot on. I think Thomas Frank is looking like will be Tottenham's next manager. Despite my feelings are not around them, I will give him every opportunity, but it does look like that's the direction we're heading in. Jerome says 17 goddamn years, no trophy. Now we sacked the man who did it for Thomas the Frank engine, who lost 33 games in 2 seasons, 1 less than Ange. This club has no ambition and no direction. I am so angry. And look, I think that's where, I think right now what I'm seeing, the general consensus, even people that maybe didn't like Ange Postecoglou, and look, you can't blame these guys. You know, at the end of the day, you can't forget him ear-cupping the fans away to Chelsea and some of the other interactions. You can't overlook that. I was always going to go against them as well. You know, you need to have a good rapport of fans to have them eating out your hands. And he sort of didn't really want that. It was just like, you're either with me or you're against me sort of thing, rather than actually getting the people that are against him to believe and get on board, which was a huge problem for him as well, because even delivering the Europa League, none of it subsided. Usually, if that was any other manager at any other club, it would have subsided and they would have been all in behind it. But at Tottenham, that didn't happen. But my big problem is this club is in a continuous mess. We've had some of the best managers in world football at this football club, and we keep sacking every single one of them. I mean, what is the expectations? Like, we're talking about we want success. Part of me almost feels like Daniel Levy done it because the guy has brought expectations and delivered a trophy. You know, part of me almost feels like, oh, now that's on me every season. I don't want that expectation. Out you go. Probably not. That's probably just me, you know, maybe coming up with a conspiracy theory. But at the end of the day, style of football, 22 defeats. It's hard to overlook, Jerome. And, you know, you can't take that risk going into next season. But I would, if it's like a Marco Silva or that. But if it's a name like of a gravitas, like, you know, if they, for instance, could go out and lure Jurgen Klopp in here, I mean, everyone says we can't do it, but I mean, look at the size of the football club. We're just after delivering a trophy. You know, he's not managing right now. If everything can get Carlo Ancelotti in their doors, why can't we go and approach someone like Jurgen Klopp? I'm okay with the decision. But what I'm not okay is if we sack Ange Postecoglou to take another risk, because I think the risk you're taking is even bigger than allowing Ange to continue. But in terms of ambition and direction, I mean, look, this has been every year since Pochettino, though, right? Every summer we're sitting here. What's the direction? What's the ambition? It's just an absolute piss take, Jerome. It's an absolute piss take. And the thing is, like, we can sit here and say it's harsh, but Daniel Levy has sacked Jose, sacked Conte, sacked Pochettino. You know, he has no loyalty to anybody, absolutely nobody. So it was always going to be a case where they'd have no problem sacking Ange. But do it fucking earlier. Don't do it in the middle of a mini transfer window when everyone else is improving for next season. And we're sitting here twiddling our thumbs going, well, who's going to be in the dugout next season? Who's going to be our coaches next season? Let alone the knock-on effect that we haven't even spoke about yet. There's some of the players that were supposed to have a really close relationship with Ange Postecoglou. Someone like Romero, for instance. Someone like Bentancur, who wanted to wait and see who the next manager is before he signs his contract. Someone like Pedro Porro. You know what I mean? These are all knock-on effects. I hope Daniel Levy has calculated it to great effect, Jerome. Al Ben says we're in the Champions League, but would you have confidence in a manager who had a relegation-type season to finish top four? Levy's main goal is top four every season. Look, and I think that's an absolute fair point to make. Look, it would have been a huge risk going into Champions League football with Postecoglou next season. But the names that I'm seeing so far, Thomas Frank and Silva, have they ever managed in Champions League? You know, have they ever even managed a cup run alongside a league campaign? A domestic cup run alongside a league campaign? You know, and this is my problem. We're sacking Ange because we want to compete on multiple fronts. We don't believe he's the guy. But yet we're going to give an opportunity to people that haven't demonstrated they can do that. It's absolute madness, Al Ben. But I do take your point. Like I said, as long as his name of gravitas, someone that's been there, done that, I'm okay with it, Al Ben. Good to see you. Hopefully you're keeping well. You must be absolutely delighted with the decision. Got a couple more chats and we'll crack on. We got this Mark's T. Maybe the Melbourne Circus is in need of new clowns. Ange would be a perfect fit. Any ideas? If they're hiding Eddie, excuse my sadistic humor. What I would say, Artist T, is, look, you've questioned him a lot this season. He delivered a Europa League trophy, and you never thought he would. So I would say that you should get a level of respect for that, because the reality is we can say anybody can do it. Why did we have to wait 41 years for us to do it again? Not everyone can do it. You know, people diminish it, you know, and go, it was an easy run. Look at Jose Mourinho's run. No one knows half the teams we played. Wolfsberger, you know, Lask, you know, teams like that. No one even knew who we played. Can't diminish the achievement of getting a trophy over the line at this basket of a case of a football club. However, going forward, well, he left them questions open himself by not shoring up and consolidating the league. And at the end of the day, people will point to Palace, you know. I was there for the Palace game. You know, I'm seeing a team in a cup final the following week, cup final before ours. They laid it on us. They came out. They didn't alter their style, didn't alter their team selection, and they went to put points on the board. And ultimately, that's where Ange Postecoglou's sacking has happened. But it's okay to say he's not good enough, but also show respect for the European trophy, my man. We've got the Big D member for 17 months. At least a decision was made Thanks, Big Ange. And look, that's the big relief, Big D. You know, many of us are sitting here for the last few days. This is a circus. What's the direction? I even got to a point yesterday, so I don't even care what the decision is anymore. I just want clarity on what direction we're going in so that I can get behind something heading into next season. So at least we've got that, the Big D. Good to see you. Shem Tan, member for 13 months. Feel sorry for who comes in after Ange, especially after delivering the Europa League trophy. Well, look, that's the expectation of the next guy coming in, is delivering trophies. And I don't want to hear anybody that's been saying to Ange, he's got to deliver trophies, to say you've got to give the next guy 18 months under the door. I don't want to hear it, because people go on about flip-flops now. That'll be the ultimate flip-floppery, to put the expectations of trophies and all of a sudden change that and go give the next guy 18 months. Because that's something I've been saying for a long time. You've got to give a manager time to cook at this football club, and you will see the results. We've got Alan Leslie, member for 12 months. His leaving statement was class. We're going to get onto that. I just want to let Eddie have his say, go around the panel again, and then I will bring in his statement. Alan Leslie, good to see you. We've got this from Joe Blogs. Great name. Says, shame we'll never know how the momentum and togetherness of this young group would have played out. Some other club will get the benefit of what Ange has learned from this season, and we're back to square one. Do you know what, Joe Blogs? My big concern is, I was on Last Word on Spurs last night, and I was listening to Ash Matic, you know, and he was saying about the youth project, and then we're looking at this guy from Copenhagen, and that Thomas Frank is the right fit. And in hindsight, like, you know, when you look at it, we've got a youthful squad. You do need a manager that is going to be on the training pitch, you know, almost like a father figure, like Pochettino was to the likes of your Walkers, your Rose, your Kanes, and everybody else like that. That is what them young players need. That is not Ange Postecoglou. He notoriously lets his coaches do the work and stuff like that. But then if we're also saying, like, do we expect these youngsters to go out and compete next season with likes of your Bayerns, Real Madrids, and that in the Champions League, and compete with a lot of the teams they're playing in facing in the Premier League, and a lot of the other clubs ahead of us are making a lot better signings than we are? You know what I mean? And it's like, how can we put the expectations of trophies and then sit there and say, let's bring in a manager to match a youthful squad? If we want trophies, you've got to up the quality of the squad. And if you want to compete, you've got to up the quality of the squad. If we go down this whole youth model, which I'm okay with youth players, by the way, but my whole thing is we didn't need to buy them because we already had a good crop coming through the under-21s, could have given them a go. But if we really want to compete, which is what the expectations are in Tottenham, you've got to bring in quality. You've got to bring in experienced players. You know, by bringing in a manager to match this young squad, we're in Champions League next year. We're going to be a laughing stock in there. And we're going to pay the price in the Premier League to it, Ashley Green. It's going to be another long, frustrating season. So I do worry about the direction that we're going in. And I need clarity on that very, very quickly, Joe Blogs. Good to see you. But Eddie, sorry, it took my while to get to you. Now I can get down to the very bottom of the chart. I think I've caught up here, my man. But look, what's your thoughts overall on the news of Ange Postecoglou sacking? Look, it doesn't really come as a surprise, Eddie. Me and you have talked a lot, you know, despite, you know, how you feel and how I feel on it. We sort of, you know, we've been saying to each other, like, we're expecting it, you know, it's going to happen.
Yeah. Look, I was expecting it, but, you know, for Frank, like, I could handle it if it was for the likes of Inzaghi or a Glasner. Like, those players who could, actual managers who could manage in multiple competitions. But Thomas Frank, like, don't get me wrong, I rate Frank as a manager. I rate him as a good Premier League manager who can compete mid-table with a squad which is suited for mid-table. But Frank was given the plans and the blueprints to beat us. He was given the tactics to beat us, like, and he couldn't do it once. The likes of Fulham did it. The likes of Palace did it to us. Ipswich beat us. But Frank, with better squad, who had better squad than all of them, still couldn't beat us. And I think it's ridiculous to expect him to come in and do better than Ange, who's won a trophy, got 5th in his first season, and with a massive asterisk next to that 17th, because we got to take into the fact he had massive injury problems when he was in 4 competitions. The only other squad who was in four competitions was Liverpool. And Liverpool only had pretty much one first-team injury the whole season, and that was Alisson. Like, I just don't understand how people can go and call Ange a bad manager, a clown, Postecoglou.
Well, apparently, though, Eddie, there's been a lot of interest around Europe for his signature.
Yeah,
if reports are led to believe. The thing is, I don't think he's a bad manager, but is he the right fit to take this football club forward? Which I think is a fair question.
It is a fair question, but I think for next season, which would have been his last year contracted to the club, unless the club decided to extend him to the 4th year, I think next season, yes, I think he would have been best to moving forward with that, because it is momentum that he could have gained from this sort of push. The players were behind him. Most of the fan base was behind him. Majority of the fan base that I've seen were behind him. But I just feel like this club has handled it so poorly in the fact that they sacked him in this mini transfer window and after he got back from his holiday. In all reality, they should have sacked him after Brighton. Like, they should have used that 4-1 as a reason to sack him. They go, you just lost 4-1, 22 losses in the league, get out of here. That's easy. They should have sacked him after that. They shouldn't have sacked him after his holiday. Like, they had no reason to take this long. And I said in other different shows, in the chats, I said I was happy. Ange can go. He can be sacked, but bring me someone of gravitas. Bring me someone who can actually take us forward. And Frank is not the man to do that. Silva isn't the man to do that. And look,
what about Ollie Glasner?
I rank Glasner very highly. He plays the sort of, he's attacking football with. I think he does alternate between 3 and 4 at the back. So I would take Glasner here, like, honestly. And there's rumors that Palace might not qualify for Europa League. That might tempt them away from the club. Maybe we can buy him out from the club. But look, despite my feelings around it, I understand people are hesitant to trust Ange to trust Ange for next season. But you got to take into account we had like 8 senior players fit who could play during our biggest part of the season, during that November, December, and January part, when we had all 4 competitions, and we had like 8 first team players fit, and they kept and we saw in the Palace game how quickly Kulu went back out. Like that last Palace game, Kulu took a bad tackle out for the rest of the season. Could be out for most next season. Like, I don't think people have taken enough of the fact of the injury and how the injuries have affected us compared to the rest of the league. Because you look at the league, a lot of these players, a lot of this other squads and teams that would have had to play in more than 1 or 2 competitions had a better backups than we do. Like, our backups 100%. Are all our youth players. Like, literally, Moore was on the bench. Olosesi was on the bench at one point in time. Lucas William Barnett was on the bench at one point in time. Like, we are taking youth players out of school and out of the youth academy to come sit on the bench for us. We don't have the squad for this the campaign. And going forward, if it's Frank, I'll get behind him the moment he comes in the door. But I just don't think he will do it, because we need to bring in good players, and Levy isn't capable of doing that, and he's not going to pay the wages.
Yeah, well, look, squad improvement is absolutely massive this summer, regardless of the manager. I think you're bringing the next manager and don't improve the squad drastically, you're setting him up for failure. And the reality is, what you were saying there about the squad, and when he's had his first team players out and he's had to try and make it work. We do this with every manager. We've done it with Jose Mourinho. His best players are out injured. You got to make it work. We've done the same with Conte. And we just expect them to work magic. I mean, when are we going to realize that the squad ain't good enough either, to meet all the expectations? The squad has to be of a certain level as well. We can't keep turning around to these managers and go, make that guy who we know shit play good today. It's almost impossible at that point. But Paul, good to see you, my man. How are you feeling over the news?
More relieved than anything else for me. It's, thanks for winning it. We won the Europa League, but now we need to push on. Personally, for me, the disrespect to the fans, the 22 losses, and then to go into a final and win it 1-0, we didn't exactly play well. We just put 10 men behind the ball. Where's the attacking football we were told we were going to get? He just basically shut up shop to win that trophy. So for me, it's the right decision in that sense, because if he can do that in the Europa League, why wasn't he doing that in the league? When we were 1-2 goals up and then we're throwing away leads 3-2, and when we did lose, we weren't losing by 1 goal. we were losing by 3 or 4, especially towards the latter stages of the season. We're Tottenham Hotspur. We can't be losing games at home 4-1 to Brighton. That's I don't care how young our squad is. And what Eddie was saying about when we had all them injuries, and he's saying all the youth was on the bench, he'd have got more respect from me if he played those youth players instead of leaving them on the bench and playing the likes of Davis, Werner, players that we know are coming to the end of their contracts or end of their time at this club. Why weren't we giving our youth a chance? He would have got more praise for doing that. If he was playing our youth players and getting them on the pitch, not saying give him 10 minutes. Right, Cooley's out, put Mikey Moore out on the left, give him 45 minutes. Where was Donnelly all season? And these injuries that they picked up when they did come on, maybe because they weren't match fit. I think Ange is to blame for half the injuries due to system, but then it's down to me, there's a lot of factors.
I had this with Brian out there, Brian Timlin, if you're watching, but I had this with Brian Timlin. There's a lot made out of the injuries at Tottenham Hotspur being down to Ange Postecoglou's style of play because the amount of times they have to sprint backwards. But people don't take into account when we've played counter-attacking football under Nuno, Jose, and Conte, they also have to make the same distance going forward. People do realize that. We sit here and go, it's all down to the style of play, this, that, and the other. But if we're playing counter-attacking football, which most people are asking for now, after asking for attacking football, after we sacked Conte, they still have to make the same distances running forward. You go back and look underneath Antonio Conte, you look at some of his benches at times, full of youth academies, because he also had a lot of injuries and stuff like that. And this is my point. Look, maybe it's a win-win. He's delivered a trophy, got the monkey off our back, got the Spurs attack off our back. And, I think with us fans, maybe got a bit of bollocks built back up on us again. But, maybe it's a win-win that maybe he's not the right guy for next season. We're bringing another guy and he takes this forward. That's a win-win. But one thing I never got into over this whole saga with Ange Postecoglou was putting absolutely everything on him. If we keep pinning the injuries on managers, because underneath Antonio Conte, people pulled up, it's the amount he's making them run before the game, when he's getting them warmed up for the game and stuff. If we keep pinning this on managers, we're never, ever going to get that department sorted out. Ever.
I do get that in the sense of, but for me, if you're sat on the halfway line, Van der Ven, for example, when we bought him, we already knew he had hamstring problems, and then we're making him run 40, 50 yards. And in regards to counter-attacking football, yeah, granted, he might, but he's not going to run those 40 or 50 yards. It's going to be the people in the midfield, the box-to-box midfielders who we bought them to do that. So for me, it was a lot of our defensive injuries, I think, were down to him. The amount of times we had to run back and plug those holes that were being left by Porro and the doggy on the other side, because literally the ball was just playing straight through the midfield. And all of a sudden, we're 1 or 2-0 down.
Yeah.
For me, I don't think he was to blame for all the injuries, but I do believe he played a part in some of them. But again, with any manager, any system, it's always going to cause injuries. But my biggest thing with him was he kept playing players we knew wasn't good enough. That everyone was saying, why is he playing him again? Why is Werner out on the left? Put Moore out, put Donnelly up. Put our youngsters in, give them the minutes. This is the time where you find these players that are going to break through into the first team. But he's given them 5-10 minutes here or there, isn't playing our youth. The only ones that actually got a chance was Bergman and Gray. But this is my point. He didn't help himself.
Well, I would make the argument, in fairness to him, he's played more youngsters than any other managers have since Pochettino. Has someone got a son in the background?
Jim,
anyone?
Is it you?
Anyone?
What's that?
1 2 1 2. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
You're getting feedback when you maybe log out, log back in again, Jimbo.
Listen, I've got to go anyway.
No problem. But Jimbo, direction moving forward, just before we let you go. What manager or what direction do you want to move in moving forward?
I don't know, Dave. But it's not Thomas Frank for me.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe Kate, you can answer for him. I'm sure you've had
He's
these.
going to answer from here. He's going to answer from here, Dave, because his computer's gone all AWOL. Hang on a sec. I shall reverse. Jimbo.
Sorry about that. My computer messed up. I don't know, Dave, but it's not Thomas Frank for me. He's not the answer.
Yeah.
But I can't understand why they would sack Ange for Thomas Frank. It don't make sense to me. I think it's a sideways step.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a huge risk bringing in someone like Thomas Frank. Don't get me wrong; he's well regarded in the game. I think, within the game of football, all the footballing people have got a lot of respect for him. But I think it's a huge gamble, going with Thomas Frank moving forward. I definitely agree with that. But Jimbo,
he's lost one less game than
One more,
one less is less than Ange. So what's the point?
Yeah. Well, look, that's my big concern as well. I've been schooling people on that one the last few days. You're saying 34 defeats are unacceptable, but 33 are. But look, it'd be interesting to see what direction the club go in, Jimbo. But look, we don't want your dogs to starve, my man. So we'll let you go and feed them.
Cheers, mate. See you later, everyone.
On, Jimbo. See you later. Well, look, we'll get Box. Do you know what? We'll get Kate back in. She's been patient. We'll find out, what she feels off what everybody has said, and then we'll let Box Office loose for a few minutes.
Look, I don't really know what to say about it, to be honest. I'm with Jim in the fact that I don't think Frank is the answer. I think it's a sideward step, but then I don't know who's about apart from Glasner that we could get. I think Glasner was there was a chance of us getting him, but I think once he won the FA Cup, I sort of said, well, that's that idea out the window. I think everyone's been a little bit dramatic. The season squad and the season and everything's not going to fall apart just because Ange has gone. If Romero leaves because Ange has gone, then Romero shouldn't be at the club as far as I'm concerned, because he should play for the badge as well.
Would you not understand it though if they sacked Ange, who's delivered a trophy, and Romero wants to win trophies, and they bring in Thomas Frank and he doesn't see Thomas Frank delivering? It's almost like the Harry Kane situation, right? They sacked Antonio Conte, to a large degree walked away, but the writing was on the wall. And then Harry Kane looks at Postecoglou coming in and going, well, I don't see us winning trophies here. And then he leaves, and this is where I worry, I think it's far too easy for us to go, he doesn't want to play for the badge, let our best players go. If we really want to build something, I do believe we've got to keep our best players at the club at all costs.
Yeah, I completely agree. But until if that's the way Romero's thinking, he's got to give Thomas Frank a chance. He can't just say, well, he ain't going to win nothing and I'm off.
Yeah.
He's got to give him a chance to see what he can do. But look, I just hope that if it is Frank, he brings in Bremo with him before he goes to Manchester United, because I would absolutely love him at the club. I'm not going to lie, every cloud and all that. But
yeah,
I do think that, as I say, I think it was harsh. I think Ange deserved the right to take us to the start of the season. But there's been so many people screaming for him out. I'm sure there'll be loads of parties all over YouTube tonight because
Alex will be one of them.
Yeah, Alex was the one who called me an embarrassing hypocrite, so I'm sure he'll be celebrating.
Oh, well, Alex will have to answer for that. But look, we'll just take these couple of chats here and then we'll get Alex Box Office in. We've got this from Jason Wales, says, surely United will now replace Amorim with Ange Postecoglou. Imagine. And then he says, Ange sexual, surely he now gets a top European Premier League club if he is so good. Well, look, the rumours were that, there are clubs chasing these signatures, so we'll wait and see on that one, Jason Will. But the reality is, look, I don't think Tottenham do hire bad managers. I think, Jose was a great manager, Conte a great manager. I think Nuno is a good manager, and I think Postecoglou is a good manager. I think the club is the common denominator and the biggest issue there. But look, for those who don't rate Ange, I fully understand it. Zane Wade says, Ange, season 1 attacking football, yes. Season 2, trophy in 17th. Now Frank and the defensive counter-attacking football all again. What are we doing here? I mean, Alex, what are we doing here? You're one that wanted Postecoglou done, sacked. No doubt you've probably got a hard on and you're willing to trade everything you've said about Postecoglou and bring in Thomas Frank. So let me know your thoughts on the situation. Let's answer saying, wait, what are we doing here as a football club? Someone like you and me, to be fair, we've been going around the last few years saying trophies, it's what matters. Don't get bored of the league, don't really care about the league. And the minute manager does that, he's out the door.
17th in the league, Dave. That's all I need to say.
Yeah, but I've heard you on streams. I've heard you on streams.
David.
No, I'm going to hold you.
I knew you were going to do this. I knew you were going to do this. I got one word said. One word said. And he can't hold his tongue because he knows the truth is coming right now. Right now. 22 losses. 22 losses, yeah, right, for this manager, yeah, that I told you that was not good enough for a very, very long time, yeah, not a coach. People are laughing at Thomas Frank, yeah, not my first choice, no, but unfortunately Glasner is well out the door. Even if he didn't win the FA Cup, I think he'd be well out the door anyway because he'd go to somewhere in Germany, you know what I mean? So I don't know where we're going with this. It's the right decision. I'm going to be respectful because the man's lost his job, but at the same time, he'll find another job anyway because he's going to be lapping out all day long. You know what I mean? Because he was predicting he's going to win a trophy. But let's be honest here, that was not because of him. That was because of the players. Look at the article from James Ollie. But anyway, which I said, by the way. But like I say, James Ollie, go and look at the article from James Ollie anyway. But let me finish my point. Let me just make my point. Because I've only had 2 minutes to make my point. The point is, though, yeah, right? Daniel Levy has done the right thing as a chairman, as a businessman. Right, he's taken the emotion out of the decision, right, and he said, right, well, if I wanted to decide to sack Postecoglou before the European final, he's going to do it after as well. Because let's be honest here, why would you not do it? You know, you can't just look at a cup run, which let's be honest here, we've not played anybody. We only played Frankfurt. I told you that we're going to beat Postecoglou. We did beat Postecoglou. I told you we're going to beat Manchester United just. It's going to be a crap game. Look what happened. You know what I mean? This is why I've got to speak loud because people interrupt the main event. But the point is, though, the point I'm making is because people don't want to hear the truth, right? And I'm waiting for the boost in the chat because that's what happens. But the point is, though, you're basically, if you look at the whole season as a whole, last season as well, right? No one's gotten better, right? He's not improved anybody, right? The tactics, I mean, it's just embarrassing, right? Okay, he hasn't balanced the team. Even though we've been defensively good, we've been crap in attack, right? And then people say, "Oh, he deserves another season, another few months." Okay, so what happens when we lose and we do badly then? And if you really believe in the manager, you give him a new contract. It makes absolutely no sense giving you a few months. It makes no sense. It's the same thing like Manchester United with Ten Hag. You know what I mean? So I don't know where we're going with this. You know what I mean? So for me, it's the right call. And like I said, Simon Jordan rattled a few Tottenham fans because he rattled it because he knew what he's talking about when he said Daniel Levy will know what the decision to make. Because if you're a businessman, you make a business decision and you do it less emotional. You don't listen to the emotional side of your view because you make the emotion side of it, you do the wrong decision. And that's it. It's instinct. That's it. So, yes, it's a risk, but that's what happens in business. You take risks, and that's what you need to do. You know what I mean? That's all I've got to say, really, for me. You know what I mean? So, you know what I mean? I'm waiting for people to start having the main event. But anyway, moving on. Back to you, Dave, to say something stupid.
Yeah, no, I'll just come back with your words. So if your words are stupid, well then, you've answered your own question here. But, I've heard you on plenty of streams down the years saying you don't care about the league. I'm not sure whether you were one that said you don't care if we get relegated to get rid of the chairman and stuff like that, that you want trophies at this football club. And, I've almost heard you say, I think you've said before, I don't care if we finish 17th as long as we bring in a trophy. But you don't want to sit here and accept the reality of that. So, I mean, you're going against your own words there.
It's all live, by the way. But anyway, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, I'll let you finish. You also sat there all season long saying Postecoglou is this, that, and everything else, not good enough, tactically naive. You never thought he was going to win the Europa League. You only pivoted when it looked like we were going to win it. So let's not pretend you sat there all along going, Tottenham were going to win this Europa League when you didn't believe we had the manager to deliver it. So
that's lies again.
It's not. That's the truth. I can go and pull up clips off your own shows and play them to people next time if you want me to do that.
Well, that's lies again.
But that is what you've said.
Well, that's lies again.
I think a little bit hypocritical on your behalf.
No, that lies again. No, sorry. No, I'm just interrupting you because every single thing you're saying is lies. But from what you said, I said I didn't think we're going to win Europa League because I didn't think we're going to beat Frankfurt. After that Frankfurt game, that woke me up, right? Which woke up a lot of Tottenham fans. Let's be honest here, right? Okay, woke me up, and then we got Bodo Glimt, right? And Bodo Glimt, and then Man United possibly in the final. So then I was sitting there thinking, well, we could win this, yes. Right, so you can change your mind because some people have changed their mind after the Europa League, which is looked on something on Twitter. So before anybody starts saying that, right, which is not a crime by the way, saying that, because you can look at things a different way. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, there was no evidence we were going to change the way we're going to play, right? After all those games, because Alkmaar, we were lucky. Let's be honest here, because Alkmaar should have really won that game, but they weren't good enough in front of attack. That was it, right? Frankfurt, away from home, he did it. But let's be honest here. If Frankfurt scored, right, because we were crap in attack, we were crap, right, we would have lost that game. Right, there was no reason because we couldn't do anything in attack. That was the thing. We were so defensive. We were too defensive. And that was it for me, right? And that's been similar for other games like Brentford, for instance, Man City, for instance. We won 4-0, but I would bet you any money if we lost the goal, we could have collapsed because we did it against Liverpool in that semi-final, right? And we actually did it when Liverpool won the league. At Liverpool, we got the lead, and look what happened. We completely collapsed. You know what I mean? So there's no evidence. It was evidence that we could have done it. It could have happened again. You know what I mean? So I'm sorry, right? With just no balance. There's no balance to the team, and that's it for me. You know what I mean?
No,
right?
Look,
before anybody says anything, if Jerome's coming here to have a go, right? If he's going to come and have a go and start being personal, right? I'm off, right? You're going to have to behave. You're going to sort him out, right? You're going to have to sort him out.
Yeah, look,
right?
I'm not
having that. No, stop, okay. Kate. I'm not talking to you. I'm not talking to you. I'm not talking to you, Kate. I'm not talking to you, Kate. I'm not talking to you, Kate. I'm talking to Dave.
Look, first of all, I think we're all adults here. Last time I checked, I think we're all over 30, maybe not Eddie, but the rest of us are.
No.
I hope that we can speak to each other in a matter of respect with some common decency, without being personal and stuff like that. Hopefully that can take place. We're all adults here. You shouldn't need me to sit there and moderate that. But look, Alex, when we were over in London, we had a good conversation. We sat there, we spoke, that, some of the defeats weren't acceptable. The start of play, it wasn't good enough at the end of the day. It was concerning the way we were going and stuff like that. And I take into account all them points, that you've made there. And I think, like I said, I'm okay with rolling the dice as long as it's Mandra of Gravitas and not someone like Thomas Frank. But what I won't do is let you sit there and say, oh, we were going to win Europa League and everything else. When pretty before you got the evidence that it looked like we were going to, you were sitting there saying it's not going to be possible. I'm not going to let you sit there and slag off people like me who enjoyed the run and said we could do it, and then all of a sudden pivot and start joining me for celebrations without holding your feet to the fire first. That's not going to happen. So I'm going to pull you up on your words. I agree with what you're saying in terms of... Wait a minute. One second. I agree with you in terms of what you're saying about Postecoglou being the right guy going forward. But I'm not going to let you sit there and portray, I said all along we're going to win Europa League when you just didn't. But anyway, anyone else want to come in there? And then we'll let Jerome come in. But big up, Zane Wade. Really appreciate support.
Well, I'll just come in quickly and go on what Alex was saying about Ange not improving everyone. I don't know if you noticed, but since Ange has taken over, he has gotten lots of our players back into the national team. Paul has gotten into the national team since Ange has taken over. Mickey has. Who else got into the national team? Vicario. Spencer's been in and around the national team. Ange has improved this team and has improved these players. The matter of the fact that he hasn't improved them, it's a lie. He has. These players,
based on what?
Based on the fact that they're getting into the national teams, they're being chosen for the national team.
Based on just the international teams.
If the national team think they're good enough, they'll bring them up.
Okay, so let's look at Kudus. So just to go back to your theory, right? Listen, I love these points because I like to batter them away, right? So it's nothing bad, just I love it. But point I'm making is, right? So you're saying Kudus got better? Kudus got better.
Oh yeah.
Do you watch him at Sampdoria?
Kula has got better on the Ange. Kula has got better on the Ange.
Yes, no, he hasn't. He hasn't. Well, I disagree.
Yes, he has.
100%. 100%. He hasn't improved. You're telling me that Bentancur's improved?
Bentancur has already been in his international team.
No, he hasn't. No, he hasn't. I disagree with that one. You're telling me that are you just basing it on Bergvall?
No, I'm not basing it on Bergvall. I'm basing it off Vicario, Mickey, Porro, Udogie. Spence has been in and around the England team. He should have been chosen.
Spence is not improved because of that.
Clueless. Toku is clueless.
It's not clueless. It's not clueless, mate. I'm sorry. It's not clueless. It's not clueless.
Before Spence dipped in form, he was our best player by far. He has proved on the Ange. He wasn't good on the. He didn't get a chance on the Conte because Conte didn't like him, and he was better than what he was at Forest. Easily, what he was better at Forest. Spence has gotten better on the Ange. You cannot batter that away, and he's gotten. So
why did you know him for half a season then? Why do you know him for half a season then? If he's so made it so good, why do you know him for half a season and then put him in the
Spence got the most of the season, and then he brought in his first choice, which is Udogie, and Udogie proved Dan's right. It would prove to bring Udogie back. Udogie was immense in the Europa League, and
Udogie was immense in the Europa League.
Yes, he was.
Okay,
not going forward, but Udogie was great in the Europa League, later stages of the Europa League, and in the Prem he gave it to Spence. Spence didn't take it. Spence got shocking after Ange gave it back to Udogie.
I stick by what I say. Our best defender was Davis and Dragerson. What's the other one? Who's the other one?
You lost all respect.
Who's the other one? Who's the other one that we got? What's his name? What is his name that we got in January?
Danzo.
No. Danzo. No, I'm sorry. How many games have they missed, though? How many games have they missed? Romero and Van der Ven. How many games have they missed?
And then they put out to how many they lost compared to
we
what we lost to them.
We put more points on the board, Alex.
We got way more.
But how? That's not what. No, I'm sorry. No, they've missed half the season, David. I'm sorry. What are we doing? What are we doing? I'm sorry.
No.
You know what I mean? Overhype these players, man.
What you're doing is you're sitting there going, Dragerson and Davies were better. When they played, they're culpable for us losing a lot of these games that you moan about. Davies.
What do you mean by that, though?
Let me finish. Davies has been culpable of a lot of the cup exits down the years that you've been unhappy about, that all of us have been unhappy about. And now all of a sudden we're trying to sit here and say they're better than Romero and Van der Ven. Don't get me wrong. They've had their injuries and they've had their mistakes. But this is my problem. If we really want to be taken seriously as a football club moving forward, you got to stop shitting on our fucking best players. Everyone done it to Harry Kane. Let me finish. Everyone done it to Son. I was a part of it. I done it to Hugo fucking Lloris when he was leaving, and now we're doing it to the likes of Romero and Van der Ven. I don't want to hear you moan about defeats, Alex. If you're willing to sell our best players, I don't want to fucking hear it. I'm sorry.
So you're telling me that Romero's had a brilliant season this season. So based on what you're telling me right now, you're telling me that Romero has had the best season this season, right? When you say missed half the season and he's not been great this season. No, he hasn't. No, he hasn't. No, he hasn't. You've been on and off this season. The only reason why, when he's played right, he's been good. But come on now. Okay, cool. So I don't want to take over the show, but moving.
Just saying, don't sit there and moan about defeats if you're going to sell our best players, because it's contradictory and it's hypocritical. Anyway, let's bring in Steve and Jerome. Let them make their points, and then everyone else can go loose on if they want to, say stuff back and all. You don't need me to moderate it. Just take this quickly from James Coffey. Says it's a win-win. Spurs have the opportunity to fix the damage Ange did to our EPL reputation. Ange's profile has been elevated and will make him attractive to other clubs. Look, it seems like that. It does seem like that. It's reported that there's interest in Ange Postecoglou. To what level of club that is, I don't know. And look, at the end of the day, he did deliver European success, and I'll be grateful for that. But the league campaign, I mean, look, we watch more league games than we do cup games, and it becomes very unbearable, intolerable at times. A lot of the defeats, a lot of the football has been putrid to watch. Can't deny that. And look, maybe it is best for the football club as long as we bring in the right guy to take this forward. What I'm not prepared to do is anybody but Ange. You know, I even seen people suggesting Michael Carrick. I mean, I started laughing off my chair. I'm like, if we were talking about wanting to compete and we're talking about these sort of guys who've just never done it before in their life, it's absolutely madness. Anyway, Jerome, and then we'll get Stevie in. Big up, though, James Coffey. Hope you're keeping well, brother. Appreciate the support.
All right. Before I start anything, let's get the elephant out of the room. Alex, I don't know what's going on, but let me just go and say it. First of all, we are all adults here. I've got nothing against you. It's nothing personal. But don't go and tell Kate to don't talk while she's saying something to you. And when the last time when we were talking, I was trying. Hold on.
But what's this got to do with the football?
Hold on. Stop.
No. But what's this got to do with football? Don't tell me what to do. But no. David, sort this out, bro. What's this all about, David? What's this all about, David?
I do want
to
look. I do want to keep it to the football, but
keep it to the football, bro.
I think Jerome's just teaching some manners. I think that's all it is.
No, sorry. What's it big manners? It's a shame, for goodness sake. Get over it, man. What is this all about, bro? For goodness sake.
Whatever's gone on.
No, sorry, but I'm not being paid for this, man. This is ridiculous.
We're adults here. Whatever. We're all adults here. Let's stick to the football. Whatever personal stuff is, we can get your numbers to each other and you can sort that out after. But you did come on and you did bring up the personal stuff, Alex. I'm not saying it's right for him to go back.
What did I say personal? What did I say personal?
We're here to talk about football.
No, but what did I say personal? I didn't say anything personal.
You mentioned it. That's all.
No, I didn't say anything personal. I did say anything personal. Where we're going with this? No, I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything personal. No, I don't know what Jerome's talking about. I didn't say anything personal whatsoever. It's just because Kate's got upset, and I don't know where this has come from. I didn't even go out.
Hashing this all out on screen. Let's just get into
exactly.
it.
So I got nothing to say. She mentioned something, and it's just that it's drawn to me. So it's got nothing to do with me. Let's just talk about football. I don't know why we're talking like this, man. You know what I mean? Let's talk about football, Jerome. It's winding me up.
All right. Let's just talk about football. Let's just forget about it. All right. Never mind. It's okay. It's all right. Let's just. My goodness. Yes. And second, I don't care what everyone says. The men deserve another season because they have achieved something that no manager, Poch, or one of the best, Poch, Mourinho, Conte, whoever you want to name, has not. He has given us a European trophy. Keith Birkinshaw got us relegated, but won us a European trophy. And now the man that we just sacked was rubbing shoulders with him because he's got us European trophy. I don't care if people are going to go, oh, it's a different thing. Look at it was an easy way to the final. I don't care about that. They all got an easy way to the final. Jose had an easy way to the final and got spanked by Zagreb. Got us humiliated. Okay? It's Jose Mourinho, the guy that wins everything, right? And still got us humiliated. And the man that did it for us in 17 years, in 40 years of not winning anything, nothing in Europe, and now we're getting sacked. Why? Because of the league. 22 games we lost, 34 games in the league, and now we're going to get someone who's lost 33 games with Brentford in two seasons. One less financial. Well done, Tottenham. Well done. Great thing. I thought we were going to go and push forward now that we won a trophy. All what we are doing right now is going backwards. Backwards. That's great. That's Tottenham. That's us. That's Spursy. The name is back again. When we thought, oh, that tag is going to go away from us. No, it's back again. We are Spursy again. Thank you, Tottenham. Great. Amazing stuff. Now, next season, now it's all going to be a whole lot of wasting our time this whole summer, not knowing exactly who the manager is going to be. And if it is Thomas Frank, we are going to have to find which player is going to be for him, wasting our time the whole summer doing nothing. And then we got Super League coming in about, 2 months? And we go against PSG. And who's going to take us against PSG? Thomas Frank. Yeah, great. Thanks, Tottenham. Thank you. Thank you for bringing embarrassment again to us. That's amazing. And people are going to go, 22 defeats. But it's the same people that have been moaning about, what does top 4 bring for us? What does top 4 bring for us? Nothing. It doesn't bring trophies. It doesn't bring nothing. And then now we're moaning because we want a trophy. Now we moan the other way and said, 22 defeat in the league, 17th in the league. Oh, that's unacceptable. Who gives a shit? We won after 17 years, 40 years of not even seeing European greatness, and we just did it. And now we suck the man that just did it for us, just to bring another unknown that we don't even know what's going to do, how he's going to play. And then when we're going to start moaning and going, this guy is shit, get the man out. He's this, he's that. We're going to call him every name under the sun. Yeah, great, amazing. Thank you, Tottenham. Thank you again for just killing our joy again. Just literally, we can't have any joy with Tottenham. They always find a way to kill it. And we just did it again. That's what I have to say for today.
How much do you put on the, of this sacking on Ange Postecoglou, and how much do you put on the board, Jerome?
To me, I put it.
To be fair, Ange Postecoglou has given them reasons to sack him, plenty of reasons.
The thing is, the board started it. The last summer, they gave him 3 kids and just 1 senior player. 3 kids, and we're saying we're going with youth. Yeah, sure, youth. 3 kids. Like nobody knows what they would have done, and just 1 experienced player. That's great, amazing. Then the injury started. He was pleading, begging the board, give me signings, give me players. We need to compete on all front. What do we first signing? A goalkeeper. Dancer. And then we bring Tell, another kid. Great signing. Amazing. Great stuff from the board. Yeah. And when the guy was thinking since January, we can't do this. We're not going to be able to do this. Let's focus on something else. You want Champions League? I'll give you Champions League. Let me just focus on Europa.
Yeah.
Job done. Job done. Job done. Levy got trophy, and he's got money from that final, and he's got Champions League. More money coming. The job is done. So how are we going to say it's on Ange Postecoglou when didn't get backing? In the summer, no backing. In January, no backing. What's the point? What is the point? What is the point of telling the guy you have to compete on both front when you have Ben Davies at the back playing for you, and you have to put a kid at the back with Ben Davies? Sure, we're going to win games. We're going to win games. So many games we're going to win. Like somebody said, his best players was Ben Davies and Dragusin. Yeah, great.
Look,
that's yeah.
I understand. I understand what you're saying, and I sort of had this with my dad before, back and forth with my dad, and one thing he said to me, and I sort of stuck with me. He said, "Look, at the end of the day, it's what he's got at his disposal, and he's got to make the best of it." And you can argue in the Europa League, he's made the best of it, but in terms of the league, maybe if he could have pivoted sooner, or in some of the games went with a bit of stronger team, put some more wins on the board, he probably wouldn't be in this situation now. So part of it, he is to blame. But I do agree with you. At the end of the day, if the expectations of the board and the fans is to compete on multiple fronts, then you've got to give a manager to do it. You can't keep giving the board the excuses and bringing in lackluster quality. And that's why I'm hoping this change at board level is what we need, you know, because I feel like it got a bit stale at the top. We're almost operating the same way we were operating in the build-up to the stadium. I'd argue our transfers were probably better, actually. You know, it seems like we're still operating in this ballpark, and we're yet to see that money that we were promised it would generate and everything else around it actually really filter through into terms of signing. Like, you look at that squad now, we can all say, yeah, we've got a couple of decent players or decent spine to build around, but not one of us can sit here and go, this guy is absolute magic. You know, we don't have that guy in the squad, and that's a major concern of mine. But at the end of the day, you know, a manager, he's got to try and make it work to a certain extent, or work with it a little bit. And I think Ange Postecoglou sort of was just like, this is my way or the highway. And ultimately, you know, people like my dad just couldn't get on board with the guy, even winning the Europa League. You know, yeah, it was great for Tottenham. We couldn't get on with him because of the way he spoke to fans, because of his arrogance, because, you know, he didn't want to take the time to bring these sort of fans along with him and stuff. It was just like, you're either with me or you're against me. And I don't think that was the right attitude. And ultimately, look, as much as I thank Ange for what he's done at Tottenham, you know, thank you for delivering the Europa League. Thank you for waking the fan base up and delivering that parade and making us realize how big of a football club we are. Thank you for giving us standards again to a certain degree in terms of cup competitions and, you know, giving the fans the appetite for wanting more trophies and more parades. But at the end of the day, it's everything else he didn't do, which is the style of play that he failed to implement over 2 seasons. The amount of losses in the league, you're going out in the cup last season. He hasn't sustained multiple competitions, and ultimately that's what got him sacked at the end there, along with his rapport with the fans and the press. And ultimately, I think Postecoglou missed a trick there. I think, you know, smart managers this day and age, even though they might hate the press, they're smart enough to know to put a bit of what's the right word? A bit of charm on, to almost charm them, and that way you get a bit more freedom. It's almost like he said F you to the press, and it was just relentless from there on the guy, and he was never ever going to stave that off heading into next season. We'll take a couple more chats, and then we'll get Steve in, and we'll crack on, and we'll open it up then. That way everyone's had their initial say on Postecoglou. RXT says, in all seriousness, I only wanted Ange gone if we bring in a better guy like Glasner or Poch. Otherwise, keep him for the first 10 games. And look, that's where I'm at. I've always said I'm okay with a change, but bring me a name that ticks all the boxes of the question marks that people had of Ange Postecoglou. Big up though, Jerome. Fair play to you. You're absolutely spot on. You know, look, I'd take a Glasner. I was almost thinking, you know, even just keep Ange for one more season and bring Poch back next year after the World Cup. But it looks like they're going to go down a different direction, which then brings the question, are they really going to sack Amanda after one season in the job and bring back Pochettino? So I think that one probably puts that out of the window. Jerome is on. He ended up getting on, and he also says, James Ollie, the Chelsea fan, what the hell is that guy on about? I mean, look, when it comes to James Ollie, you know, I just don't rate it whatsoever. ESPN FC, I mean, you know, I'd rather go somewhere else for my information than James Ollie. And definitely, and he comes from a program that mocked Harry Kane and don't really ever have Tottenham people on there. So it's very biased against us. Kim A.D. Helgeson says it's in all other companies, the chairman would be sacked, not a manager, new chairman. Well, this is the thing, and hopefully this is what we're seeing at board level take place. They reckon you might see a new chairman if the mutiny or the coup d'etat at the top is true. But the reality is, this is the problem. We keep making managers culpable. What about Daniel Levy? He needs to be held accountable as well. You know, the amount of manager turnover compared to how many years he's been in the job. It's nearly a manager every season. It's absolutely ridiculous on that one, Kim. You know, heads have to roll. But in fairness, they are being consistent. The heads are rolling at board level. So to be fair to them. Sorry, guys, I'm just getting a bit of feedback off someone. Does anyone know who it is? Anyway, it's gone now. Faz Radfar 4-1 Spurs, disgusting owners, shameful, Levy out. I am fuming. Well, look, you know, Faz Radfar's pivot into Levy out. Faz Radfar was fully behind Ange. I'd say you're absolutely gutted, Faz. Absolutely gutted, my man. But look, we move, man. We move forward. We try and get behind the new project. At the end of the day, you know, I've always said, Ange in, Ange out, shake it all about. At the end of the day, we're Tottenham fans. It's what we love, the club, you know, the name. We've also got Aaron says, this clown is just trying to make a name for himself. In fairness, I don't think Alex is. Like, look, I always say this. Despite Alex, he drives me absolutely insane. I actually really like the guy. You know, I spend whenever I'm over in Tottenham, he always takes his time out to come and see me, which he doesn't have to do, you know, and spend a bit of time with me and have a conversation. And I actually really like Alex, despite he driving me mad. And that's why I always have that mutual respect for the guy. Steve D says Davies was our best defender. What a mug. And then Steve D also says K in, Alex out. Don't get him started, guys. Don't get him started. We've just got him calmed down. Don't get him started. But look, we'll hand this over to Steve. Let Steve have his say.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you guys are enjoying your Friday evening out there in the UK. I do want to say that
Steve, can we get you to log out and log back in? I think the feedback is still on your end. Okay, if you just mute your mic for a sec. 2 1 2 1 2. Yeah. We'll just get Steve to log out and log back in. The feedback was coming on his end. But Josie, you have your hand up. I think you want to come in.
No, I was saying the echoing was kept going and going. But I've got to shoot because I've got to go and play football. I've just got. I was away getting changed. The only thing I'll leave it with, I've just read the. I know you're going to talk about this. I've just read the statement, and for me, looking at both statements, this wasn't a decision that was made today. This was a decision that had already been made. They've kept quiet about it. They knew, both parties have known about it. Looking at both the individual statements, they're well thought out statements. They weren't ones that were made up today. So I think the decision had been made, and it was only communicated out today that he left. The only thing I will say is that I did say earlier on when I gave my, my thoughts is both negative and positive carnage ahead for Tottenham this summer is to be continued throughout the summer, because there's a lot still wrong with the club, and if it's going to be sorted out, it's going to take the whole summer to do so. So I'll leave it at that. Can I say thank you for having me on, Dave? Thank you to everyone else. Listen to all your comments. Thank you to everyone in the chat. And as always, come on, you Spurs. I'll catch up with you soon.
Ozzy, thank you very much for giving up your time to come on, my man. Really appreciate it. Guys, get across, check out Tell Cockerell. I'm sure he'll be going live with his own say at some point to get across and check it out. Guys, we need to find out where this echo is coming from. It's wrecking everyone's ears. 1 2 1 2. Who muted there and who unmuted? So Paul's unmuted. That's fine. Jerome's unmuted. That's fine. Box office, you unmute. Eddie's unmuted. 1 2 1 2. Unmute box office. 1 2 1 2. Kate unmute. 1 2 1 2 1 2. I think it's coming off you, Kate.
Me.
I do know. Yeah, I do know you said you have to go soon. So look, what we'll do is look. In general, what direction do you want to go forward, Kate? What's the style of football you want from the next manager? And have you any names that you put forward? And I'll put your link in the chat here as well.
Well, it'd be nice to see attacking football, but I don't know who that means. But I just want to see us win some games. I'm fed up of not winning games, to be honest, Dave.
Yeah.
I'm not someone who likes to be ultra negative, but doing the predictions this year was a real chore. Even streaming's been a chore. I literally took a 3-week time out because it affected my mental health so bad, YouTube this year. But look, I just hope that fan base start being nicer to each other, and that includes you, Alex. And maybe then the fan base can actually get back together to be unified, because at the end of the day, we're all Tottenham fans, and all this name throwing and mudslinging, it gets us nowhere. So look, I just hope, like I say, I just want to see some wins in the league, and hope we can find someone we can stick with instead of chopping and changing every 5 minutes.
Yeah. No, look, I echo the sentiments. And look, first of all, thank you very much for continuing to send in the videos. I know it's hard, especially when you're being berated in the comments below. That's just natural when you're losing games. And look, I've been there before where sometimes YouTube can get a bit too much on top of you and you need to take time out. But I think I speak for most people anyway. I'm glad to see you back around. Keep doing what you're doing. And guys, please get across and subscribe to Kate and Jimbo. Really like them. They're very, very sound people. So make sure you get across there and smash that subscribe, Kate. Thanks for your time this evening as well. And tell Jimbo I said thank you as well.
That's all right. Take care, everyone.
See you later, Kate.
Have a good.
Hey, I've got to shoot.
Oh, no problem. Well, Paul, again, thank you very much for your time this afternoon, my man. We'll speak again soon.
No. That you will. All I'm going to say is
I need to speak to you about something anyway, so I'll be in contact.
Yeah, no worries. For me, it was the right decision by the club. Take the sentimentality out of it. It was the right decision. I liked Ange, but unfortunately it didn't work out. I just hope the next guy, whoever it is, comes in, you know, and actually brings and coaches our youth, you know, and makes us hard to beat. You know, get us hard to beat, then let's start scoring the goals again like we used to, and become the club I've always known us to be. You know, I'd rather win 4-3 than lose 2-0. It's, you know, always been that way. But anyway, nice to meet you all.
Hopefully we can start.
Thanks for the chat. Games. Cheers, Dave. And I'll see you all again soon.
See you again very, very soon, my man. Have a good one. Big up, Paul. Well, we've got 2 or 3 out, and then we've got 1 or 2 in. We're waiting for, I think, Sean. He's been Ange out all season. I have to wait for him. It won't let me bring you in, Sean, until the camera's on for some reason, or the mic's not maybe connected. But Steve, look, let's get your feelings on things, and then once Steve has finished talking, guys, if there's anything you want to hit back on or, you know, continue on speaking about, just feel free to come in off the back of what Steve has to say. I mean, look, Ange Postecoglou sacked. The club have cited that they took out the emotions out of the decision. They've cited the league as not being good enough ultimately, you know, and that's basically what they've based their decision on, although they recognize the European success and thank Ange for it. They just think a change in manager is best for this club to move forward. I mean, do you agree with the sentiments?
Here's the thing. I do, to an extent. The first thing I do want to say is that, number one, if Mikey Van de Ven and Christian Romero do not round into form and play their best football of the season, we do not get out of that knockout round. AZ Alkmaar, Little Loney, Eintracht Frankfurt, we don't even come close to that trophy. So that's number one. But also number two, I want to thank Ange Postecoglou for his service to this club. I understand the season did not play out the way that he expected it to. A lot of that had to do with the misgivings in the summer transfer window, and then again in the winter transfer window when we were in desperate need of help. He did not get it, and unfortunately, it just did not play out the way that he expected in the second half. That's the one. That's the one thing. On the other hand, he put all his eggs in the Europa League basket. He sacrificed the Premier League season in order to gain European trophies, which is perfectly fine. But there are consequences to your action when every other week you're rotating your squad heavily in the Premier League and you're having embarrassing performance after embarrassing performance with guys who, quite frankly, cannot play up at the Premier League level. And I'm talking about Ben Davis, and I may or may not talking about Kevin Danso. The sample size for me is just too small. I just don't know yet. But there's a lot of players who were largely disappointing when this club was heavily rotated. And at that point, Dave, you said earlier that Ange Postecoglou has given the board plenty of ammunition for him to lose his job. And I ultimately think that, you know, when you're heavily rotating in one of the most important portions of the schedule, and all those results are coming back negative, there are going to be consequences to be paid. So on the one hand, I definitely thank him for the trophy. I mean, this is the first time that we as a fan base can celebrate a trophy in 18 years. So on one hand, I gladly thank him for that. But on the other, you have to question whether or not that outweighed the results in the Premier League. And I'm telling you what, man, 22 losses is just not good enough. And there's nothing that you can hang your head on it. But that being said, the question isn't necessarily for me about Ange Postecoglou. It's going to be the next guy who's going to be coming in. And can he actually break the cycle of every 18 months we're just chopping and changing a new philosophy, a new way that we're doing business? And so for me, that's more important than Ange Postecoglou's misgivings.
No, look, I definitely agree with the sentiments of the trophy. Give me the best day of my life. Go on.
I wanted to come. Yeah, can I ask a question? Can I just ask a question? Right, because Steve made some points that I just need to come back on. He says that we need to start again. We need to start again. Yeah, right. Why do we need to start again? Right. Because for me, I just want to know why you think we need to start again. Because for me, a coach is what we need. This team has not been coached for 2 years, in my opinion. I think it's been not coached at all, to be honest with you. No one's got better. I
disagree with you, sir.
Why would you
say that?
What are we paying our coaches to do, though, Alex? By that logic, then, why have any coaches in around Tottenham? What are they doing?
Well, because the coaches weren't doing what they were told. They were getting told what to do by Ange. Ange is a manager. Ange is just somebody that just organises things and tells the coaches what he wants, and that was it. That's why we're seeing the same sort of goals that we were conceding all the time. Like Benacore, which I can't put a new Juventus Regent now because he's won a trophy, but he's been awful. In that midfield, I would not take any of our midfielders because they weren't played the right way. When you play them the right way, like we saw, like we saw, right? When you play Basuma as a midfielder that actually is a box to box, right? Not a defensive defender, right? When you play Bentancur the way you with in a double pivot, when you play Sarr and Maddison's the main one, right? Maddison gets a lot of criticism, right? Right, when he's not used as a number 10. You know what I mean? And when he's used as a number 10, we get big scores. And he creates, right? Facts. Yeah? Facts. Not Kulusevski. Maddison. That's it. Right? So for me, right? Okay, for me, I hugely disagree. You know what I mean on that one, because I think for me, and also I don't agree with this notion about we need to keep a manager. Our club, right, with Daniel Levy in charge, right, who needs credit by the way, because he got us a European trophy because he kept your manager, right, through hard times, right, and kept him to win this trophy, right. So he gets the credit as well, right. Okay. This board wants to have a system where the director of football is the ultimate. That should be the consistency here, and the coaches are the ones that just move on, right? So they shouldn't be afraid to keep letting go of coaches anymore. The anomaly was Pochettino, Harry Redknapp, Martin Yo.
We should be. You look at the teams that have picked up all the domestic trophies, you know, over the last couple of years. Man City, Guardiola in there a long time. Liverpool, Jurgen Klopp in there for a long time. Fucking even Newcastle picking up a trophy. How long has Eddie Howe been there? You know, they stuck through his injury.
Yeah, but Eddie Howe would have got sacked.
The reality is, right? You're asking us to operate like Chelsea without the Chelsea budget, without the Chelsea ambition.
No,
that's never going to bring you. Yeah, that's what you're asking for. I'm sorry. That's
no, I didn't say that. No, I said.
Let me finish. Let me explain it. Right? You said we shouldn't be afraid to get rid of coaches. We shouldn't be keeping coaches here for a long period of time. That's what you said, correct?
Yeah, but you just completely, not listen to the context. You completely not listen to the context.
If you want,
but you've not listened to the context, though.
No, I'm
not
going to give
listened
you
to the context.
The context of everything at Tottenham Hotspur, and the main aim is to be successful. By your logic, if we're going to go down the route of hiring and firing managers, you need to bankroll that.
You've not listened to me at whatsoever what I just said. What I said was, no, you didn't listen to what I said. I said to you, right, the ultimate is the director of football, right? This is a system, but it happens all over Europe, right? And they have coaches that are employed every single, just coaches, right? Head coaches, right? And they're the ones that coach the players, and the director of football brings in the players. That's it. That's what we are aiming for. That's what we've been trying to do for years now.
But the aim is on that is you bring in a manager to suit what style of football you want to play.
Well, that's the whole point. That's what we tried to do that 2 years ago.
Right. Yeah, that's fair enough. But then on that basis, you've got to give a manager time to make it work. The only way you can continuously go through that cycle of sack managers if you know you're giving them the best squad possible to be able to work with. That's why when Roman Abramovich walked into sack managers, he knew he had the best players 3 times over and that the manager was the problem. At Tottenham Hotspur, we can't keep glossing over the fact that the manager is always the biggest problem.
But why does it work for Brighton then?
Where does it get us?
Why does it work for Brighton then?
Huh?
Why did it work for Brighton then? What Brighton are able to chop and change managers every 2 years?
What
right? The managers are taking the way.
What's our aim? What's our aim? You want to be Brighton? What have they won? Is that what you want to be?
Yeah, but don't sit here.
Don't sit here and use Brighton. Don't sit here and use Brighton as an excuse when they haven't won anything.
No, I'm not making excuses.
And your ambition, which you speak about down the years, is winning trophies, and then sit there and go, why does it work for Brighton? What have Brighton done in European football or in the game of football in general?
We were 17th, though. We were 17th, David.
The Premier League for a few years. Fuck me. Absolutely brilliant. If that's what you want Tottenham to be, fair enough. I don't.
Okay, but David, we were 17th. But just to remind you, we were 17th with 38 points, by the way. So you're talking like we're like world class and whatever. We were 38 points. You know that,
by the way.
Yeah. And yet we're on Champions League.
38 points, by the way. 38 points, 17th. Just to remind you, by the way, right? So it's not like
38 points. We are in the Champions League.
Stop them right now because we we're doing really well. People are rejecting us left, right, and centre, right? And it's not just because we won the Europa League, we're going to be up and that we're going to be up there, right? They're going to be looking at the league as well. You know that. You know what I mean? So I'm just saying to you, right, that stability-wise, I'm not saying this is the right way of doing things, but Tottenham have been trying to do this director of football for a long time now, right? We know who's coming in. Pratigi's coming in, right? This is why, Jose, don't get used to it. He was actually spot on what you were saying, right? Because I think the decision would have been done a long time ago, right? Would have been done a long time ago. Because look who's left. Look who might be leaving right now. Scott Munn might be leaving, right?
Yeah,
Johan Lange might be leaving. You know what I mean? So this is clear up that's been going on this has been planned for a very, very long time. You get what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is that what they're trying to do the model of the director of football and then the coaches. So I think what people are getting afraid of at the moment is that this guy's going to hopefully be here for the next 6 years or next 2 years or 3 years. I don't think that's the point. I think the point is that they're going to do coaches, and if Pratigi's not happy or the hierarchy is not happy, they'll just get rid of him and they'll get somebody else in.
I get what you're saying, right? And I get the model that they're trying to operate off. I fully get all that. But the reality is, unless you're going to bankroll that and bring in the best players for it to work, it's never going to achieve greatness. It's never going to achieve long-term success. You look at all the clubs for the last decade and a half or the last 2 decades that have won the Premier League, you know, bar maybe Leicester or bar, you know, some of the Chelsea managers, all the other managers at Man United, at fucking Man City, at Liverpool, they've all been in the job long term. They've built it up to that point. And if we want to get there, and that's the aim, because I don't want to be like Brighton, I want to get there to be able to sustain league challenges. It tells me you've got to give a manager time to do that. We gave Pochettino time on the job. He brought us consistency. He brought us challenging for trophies at a consistent level. Okay, didn't get over the line, but he had us there. He had us being spoke about every single occasion. And if we want to get there, at some point, you do have to give a manager longevity. And I've been consistent about this the whole way through. I was consistent about when we were sacking Conte, when we were sacking Nuno, and when we were sacking Jose. If we want to get to competing with cities, even Arsenal now, you know, they had a chance to sack Arteta. They didn't. They stuck by him. They're in league title races, you know. And this is the thing. You look at football, longevity and time in a job to build it by working with them. Yes, you're going to bring in players for the long-term investment on what you think is going to be long-term suitable, regardless of what coach is in the dugout. But you also have to bring in players that the manager needs in specific positions to make his system absolutely flourish. And we fail in that regard. We just bring in managers. We've done it to Jose. We've done it to Conte. We just bring a manager and go, that's the squad we're providing you. And this is the problem. We're not matching up the managers with what we actually want to do. So therefore, Alex, that's why this model is not working. We're not doing it right.
Dave, but if we talk about the director of football, Alex, by your logic, if you're saying we're going by director of football and we need a coach, does that mean the director of football has failed their duties because we were ill prepared for this season then?
Oh yeah, 100%. Jerome, you're absolutely 100% right.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't. That's why I called out the fact that I wanted Pratigy back in my club, which is the most embarrassing statement. I said it earlier on. I was embarrassed by making that statement because I said that I was criticising so long because Johan Lam was absolutely goddamn useless, and Scott Mann was just the invisible man. Right. So, like, listen, I've had to take some humble pie. I've had to take humble pie on the Hoybier, and I had to apologise to Queen Ellie. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, it's not like I'm not getting liberty, right? You know what I mean? But anyway, I don't want to say too much because these other people need to have their sayings. You know what I mean?
We'll let Sean have his say, and we'll come back to you, Alex.
Yeah, no, again, I think you guys have raised some great points. And again, Dave, I think what you were getting at is the heart of the problem. The whole transfer strategy in the last 2 years has been to bring in the most talented youngsters in Europe. Ange was not starting to give them those opportunities to break them into the squad when we're having those injury crises and start betting them in. There was not a clear development of all of those players. Again, Ange used some of those players. He started using Gray, he was using Bergvall, but there was a lot of guys that were getting overlooked for Timo Werner and other things when there were chances to develop those players. Again, it's clear Ange didn't seem interested fully in that youth project. And that's why he had to go. Again, the club's clearly made a decision. This is what we are trying to do. If you look at who we're still being linked to, there's a bit of that decision. And Ange doesn't line up fully with that new direction.
Yeah.
And regardless of whether or not it's Frank or someone else, that's a different debate. But the problem is Ange was not doing well enough with the squad that he had. He couldn't get his style of football kind of to function in the context of the club and the players.
Yeah.
And the project was kind of falling apart to a degree. Again, he had a great cup run. Again, I think he was underrated a little bit maybe as a cup manager. But again, there was a lot more that needed. And again, like the reason that Poch was able to get us to a Champions League final is because he spent a bunch of time bringing through and developing that generation. We've started to get those players in. So now we need the manager who can get the most out of them and develop them. Tottenham are never going to spend more than.
But are we going to compete though next year, though, Sean? That's the thing. Like, we can go down this route.
Dave, we're not going to win the Champions League regardless of what manager we bring in or anything.
I get that. But you think
so I think the best
box office and everybody else who does watch-alongs won't be pissed off if we get Tank in the Bayern? We're not going to sit there and go, well, it's okay. We're not going to win the Champions League. Let's be real about it. We're all going to throw our toys out the pram and go absolutely ballistic. And the reality is, that's our expectations as a fans. That's now the expectations on the club because we delivered the Europa League, is to go and compete. I'm not saying we're going to win it, but at least fans want us to compete, you know. And the reality is, by bringing in a manager just to work with these youngsters, we are going to get slapped up next season, and it's going to be embarrassing. The fans won't tolerate it. Fans will straight away, within 3 months, say, get him out my football club, get in a manager right now that can help us go and compete. And by then, it's too late because you haven't done the business in transfer window. Regardless of the squad we have now, it needs improvement, and it needs the right manager to go with it to kick it on. We can't just sit here and go, bring in a youth manager to work with the youngsters. We're not an under-21 squad. We're a senior team trying to compete with other senior teams who have some great players in their teams.
Well, again, the one thing I would say is we brought Paratici back. And again, I think that's fixing part of the problem was the balance of the squad. We didn't have the combination of that youth and experience, but ultimately, again, Ange wasn't doing anything well enough in the league. So it's hard to see a manager doing worse than that. Again, I think that a competent manager who is much better at squad rotation, squad selection, and the combination of proper kind of improvements brought in under Paratici, someone who knows what they are doing, is going to be a lot more effective. Again, we're seeing a lot of issues with Ange throughout the season and in the last 2 years. I mean, people keep saying, oh, he got fit the season before, forgetting that we got almost all of those points in the first 10 games and then never got close to kind of that consistency or record in the rest of his tenure. And again, I think that if we hadn't kind of overperformed that first 10 games, like I don't think people would even be as nostalgic for Ange and the project that was there. And so again, a lot of it will come down to the work that Paratici can do in the summer. There's some big upgrades and fixes that we need. Basuma can play world class as a 6, but he's done it 4 games out of 60. He has to go. He's not reliable enough to anchor that center midfield. Again, we don't have a balance that I don't think any currently in our midfield that I don't think any manager could fully get. I do think the double pivot has proven more successful, but there's some squad work that needs to be done there. I mean, Richie, we love him, but he cannot stay fit. He probably needs to be sold. But again, I don't think Ange was the right guy because the main focus of all of these transfers has been young guys, and I don't think Ange is quite there to integrate them and bring them to that next level. What coach is, again, Frank might be the guy. He probably isn't, but it's clear this current project was probably as far as I think it could have been taken. So rather than wait a year, again, if you give Ange the beginning of the season, which even I was tempted to do kind of with the euphoria of the season, then if it turns south and we see the continued kind of pattern, it doesn't really improve under Ange, the new manager has lost the entire preseason to try and instill a new direction into this squad. So again, as hard as it is, and again, it's probably a very close call, I think in the long run, it's probably the right decision. And now the club needs to fix all the other issues, including the recruitment, which Paratici probably does, get the medical department straightened out, and focus on how they kind of push on. How do we use that money from the Champions League to improve the squad, to make sure we can consistently challenge?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
technically what we're saying, sorry Dave, so technically what we are saying is we just stop here. We just won a trophy. We should be a team that should be pushing on and say, we got a taste for a trophy. That manager has given us a taste for a trophy. He asked for experienced players for the next season so we can push on in the Champions League and competing on all fronts. Now we are saying we want a coach to develop young players, which mean another 5-10 years without no trophies. Is that what we are talking about? Is that what we are saying?
But Jerome,
is that what we're saying?
But Jerome, I just want to ask a question though, yeah? Right?
Yeah.
Like I said before, based on the season we had just last season, yeah, right? What made you think that we're going to go on and win other trophies next season just because we won Europa League? Because this season, right, the season coming, we're in Champions League, right? 2 games a week. You could handle 2 games a week in Europa League. By the way, I'm not having a go at you. This is just you know. I like debates. I like debates. You know me, right? Right. And this is why I like Steve, because I actually love the way that you made your point, by the way, because this is what I love. I love this sort of thing. Ask Dave. The point is, though, yeah, is that you know, it's like when you see the what we did last season with Europa League, right? We saying that we couldn't handle it. The ITK said, right, when I wanted an experienced midfielder, right, I said on my channel, right, and they said, oh, we don't need midfielders because we've got Archie Gray and Burva and they're doing one in training, they said, right. They also said that we didn't need defenders because we've got the future and Vucevic and Phillips, but he completely ignored his first season. Right, you know what I mean? When I said we need defenders, we definitely need defenders because Van der Ven's hamstring's going to tick, and Romero, we don't know what's going to happen with him. You know what I mean? Right? And so, you know what I mean? So, what made you think we're going to go and win another trophy? You know what I mean? Because we had Champions League this season, we got the league, and we had to do better. We had to do better because we can't just bet on Champions League, FA Cup, Carabao Cup, and just getting a cup next season. Well, FA Cup and Carabao Cup doesn't get you Champions League next season. You know what I mean? The following season doesn't get you Champions League. And the reason why people are so happy at the moment, if it was an FA Cup that we won and we were 17th, would you have the same energy right now for Ange Postecoglou?
You wanted that before.
Or Carabao Cup.
Look, I still wanted a trophy. Okay, like the Carabao Cup and 17th, we still not be the greatest season ever, but we won a trophy. That's what we wanted, right?
But would you still want to keep him? Would you still want to keep him with a Carabao Cup and a 17th, right, or FA Cup and 17th? Would you still want to keep Ange Postecoglou?
An FA Cup and finishing 17th, it's a different story. Okay, but right now, hold on. Right now, it's different. We won the European League, European Trophy. We are in the Champions League. He delivered what was asked of him: get Champions League and get us there.
Yeah, but that's the point I'm making, though.
He got. Wait, hold on. He got us there, right? The second thing he said is, with the next season, how are we sure? But he's going to handle it. The first thing he said after the Europa League final is we need experienced players for us to compete on all fronts.
Correct.
If the club was willing to back him, really going to back him, we are going to go, you know what? You're right. We're going to give you those experienced players for not to have debacle in the league, and we'll give you your experienced players so that you can compete. But what they did instead was, for us to kick on, was no, sack the guy. He's going to be asking for too much now because he's got the upper hand on us. He can demand anything he wants because he won us a trophy. He got Champions League, so he can demand more. So what we're going to do is get rid of him, bring someone that's not going to ask more, and we're going to give him kids again, and then we'll see how things goes. That's the Tottenham motto. That's Daniel Levy motto, and we're all going to bite in it and say, it's okay. We'll give it another 10 years, 17 more years until we can win something again.
Can I answer?
We'll develop the youth. Yeah.
Can I answer that as well? It's just like, look, I hear what you're saying, Alex. Look, I think no one's sitting here denying that was always going to be a risk heading into next season with Ange Postecoglou, right? You know, based on the evidence of his 2 seasons of work, it was always going to be a risk. But to your question, what makes people think Thomas Frank is going to deliver a trophy next season?
Yeah, but it doesn't matter about it.
No. You can't sit there and ask the question about Ange Postecoglou.
I understand that he might not win a trophy. I understand he might not win a trophy. But the thing is, my expectations were never going to win a trophy next season. My expectations was doing better in the league. You know what I mean? My expectations is doing better than 17th. You know what I mean? And coaching players to make them better. That's the point at the moment.
Alex, what I will say on that is hindsight by you. For years, you've been pouting the narrative of trophies. You've even said before, you don't care about the league. You care about trophies. So that is hindsight for you. Now that you've got a taste of your own medicine, you don't like it. So now all of a sudden the league matters. And that's where I feel like Postecoglou, to a degree, has been unfairly treated because fans have shifted the goalpost. I take your points about it being a risk next season. But like I've always said, give me, you can't sit there and go, well, what makes you think he's going to deliver next season? What makes you think Thomas Frank is going to deliver? He's never managed in Europe before, let alone try and compete.
Pochettino never managed in Europe before when he came in. Pochettino never managed when he came to top.
We were a different club back then.
We're now a different club now.
Everything else,
Poch walks into a Tim Sherwood side. Frankie's walking into an Ange Postecoglou side that's just won Europa League. He won a trophy.
Exactly. We're talking about a manager to pick us up from what we've just delivered and bring us forward. Not a manager that's going to come in here and improve us in the league. Because I can guarantee you now, if we finished 8th next season, you'll be the very one sitting there moaning at the end of the season going, what did we win? And don't say you won't, because you've done that under every other manager we've had at the end of the season. Yeah, but what did
because I didn't like Mourinho. I didn't like Conte. I didn't like Nuno. Right? I made it quite clear I didn't like Postecoglou because I didn't know nothing about him, and then I realised a lot about him over the first season. So, you know what I mean? It's like these managers have not really. I've gave him a chance because, like I said on my channel, Mr. Box Office TV, I've said I didn't like Pochettino, but he persuaded me after the second season. You see what I'm saying? I saw players getting better. You know what I mean? Right, Pochettino. The difference between Pochettino and Postecoglou in his second season had 400 million to spend, and that's what we got last season. 17
on what? On what?
On what, Alex? We spent it on kids.
On kids.
We had Bergwijn,
bench players,
exactly.
Archie Gray. It's like Bergwijn, Archie Gray. It's like Vustovic. He hasn't even played for us.
Second coming, by the way. We all say that he's the next second coming, Bergwijn, by the way. You know what I mean? And also a lot of people say about Archie Gray as well. You know what I mean? So I'm just saying. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, because I know other people want to say something, Sean and Steve.
You're entitled to your saying. You're entitled to ask questions. You're as much of this panel as everybody else, Alex. You can speak.
Yeah, no. The thing is, I just don't want to take it away from these two gentlemen. You know what I mean?
And again, this is where I think, if we really want to kick on as a football club, people have to stop putting things that make their narrative sound good. Like people mention the money we've spent. right? Until I pulled it up, half of the people were still including the money for Kulu and Porro, which were already done before Postecoglou walked in this door, right? You know, then you also look at it, you're including the likes of Elise, Hyuk, players like that. I mean, this is the thing. What are they spending it on? If we want to go and compete, we've got to stop going, well, we spent this on this guy, he hasn't made it work. Okay, but what have we spent it on? You know, we sold Harry Kane. What did we buy in the forward line? You know, and this is the problem. We're not given, like, we can sit here and keep blaming managers, and when we keep sacking managers, that's ultimately what the perception the club is giving out. You know, we're doing everything perfect. The manager is the problem. But our squads are so bang average, and they have been since Pochettino. That's why I love Pochettino, because the reality is, outside of his first 11, 13, he had a bang average squad. But in fairness to the guy, he fucking managed to make it work, right? But we're not going to hit gold like that every single time. You know, everyone keeps going, but Poch done it. Okay, but how many Poches have we stumbled on since we've tried? And how many people have made it work? You know what I mean? And this is my point. Before that, Harry Redknapp was the last one to make it work. But how many managers between Redknapp and Pochettino? Do you know what I mean? We don't stumble across these all the time. And this is what I keep saying. Yes, we can look at the manager and question the manager and question what he's doing. But let's also not cover up and have fair discussions around, we haven't built a proper squad. What are we wasting our money on? You know what I mean? Let's have these fair conversations, because at the end of the day, if you're just painting one narrative, and it happens both sides, by the way, it's never, ever going to resolve anything. You can never, ever have any fair discussions around it. At the end of the day, I accept it was a huge risk going into next season with Postecoglou. You know, to damn Soulful's point, I think you put another chat there saying, you know, it's a huge risk going in with any manager. But my point is, I'd rather go in with a manager that's delivered a Europa League title and knows how to somewhat get there in Europe than a guy like Thomas Frank, who's never managed in Europe. You can't sit there and go ridicule Postecoglou's CV and say he's not good enough, he can't compete on all four fronts, and then lower them expectations for the next manager walking in the door. You know, it's unfair. And then that's why a manager will never, ever succeed at this football club, because, you know, you put expectations on one manager, you change it for another manager. I'm sorry. You know, if we want to...
Did the fan base lower the expectations for the thing? Did that lower the expectations for the Ange Postecoglou, though? Because there was lots of excuses for Ange Postecoglou, though. Just to come back on what you're saying.
Who's made
there was a lot of them. Let's be honest. There was a lot of excuses about the injuries.
No.
Yeah,
See, they're not... This is the thing. This is what I'm talking about, honest conversations. If you think injuries don't have an impact on performances on the pitch, I'm sorry, that's just naive. And that's stupid.
You're telling me Richarlison's a great... we missed the Richarlison.
Anyone that's played in the team, anyone that is even played in an Astro team, if you're missing your best player, you're going to feel the hit. Let's be brutally honest about it, right? That's honesty. You're going to feel it. You're playing FIFA with your friends, you play pro clubs, you're missing your best player, you're going to feel the hit. That's the reality of it. You know, injuries do take its toll on your squad. They took its toll on Jose Mourinho when he was top of the league, and the injuries started piling up. We failed off. It took its toll on Conte. You know, injuries take its toll on the team. Look, I get it. I understand what you're saying. The thing is, the reality is, I'm sitting here, I'm telling you, I agree with you. 22 defeats isn't acceptable. But don't sit there and go, 34 defeats over 2 seasons is unacceptable, but let's let that slide for Thomas Frank, who's had 33 defeats. If you're going to put one pressure on a manager while he's in the dugout, be consistent and don't lower that expectation for the next guy coming in, because when you do, it's just flip-floppery, and it just looks like an agenda then.
Dave, can I jump in here?
Yeah.
Again, everyone keeps saying Frank 33 defeats, but the caliber of the players available and the money to spend on the squad is very different. Name how many players from Brentford would
how many
you
Tottenham
take?
fans have sat here and said they'd take Wisa? How many Tottenham fans have sat here and said they'd take
How
many Tottenham fans? Let me finish. How many Tottenham fans have I heard recently say they'd take Shada? How many Tottenham fans down the year have I heard say they'd take Pinnock? So don't, like, this is the thing. You know, we can sit here and say that, but the reality is, down the line, Spurs fans have looked at Brentford's recruitment and said, get him. They'd make an improvement into our team. So if that's the reality, then, you know, you can sit there and say that about Thomas Frank, but then don't sit there as Spurs fans and say, he'll walk into our team and improve it. He'll walk into our team and improve it. You see my argument?
Dave, that's all I'm saying is there's 2 clear, obvious upgrades and some guys that might do as well as our bench guys. And again, it's kind of more of, if that's what he's working with, you don't expect them to go out and win as many games as you expect Spurs.
My whole point is consistency. Don't sit there and say 34 defeats is unacceptable and then sit there and say 33 defeats is tolerable. If your bar is 34 defeats is unacceptable, then your bar should also be 33 is unacceptable, 32 is unacceptable, 30 is unacceptable. Stop lowering the standards. The reality is...
But the standard is based on the squad, though. Like,
exactly.
Again, if we take two people in a combined 11...
said they would take most of Brentford's forward line and put it in ours.
Brentford's manager make them better, Dave. That's the point.
Hold on.
Sit there and say they would take Ethan Pinnock and put him into our team. So my point is, we can sit there and say, look what he's working with. But at the same time, I've heard Spurs fans down the last 2-3 years call for us to sign their players. So I'm not entering that discussion because it's a non-go. When people like Alex, he'll sit there and use that excuse for Thomas Frank, but then sit there and also down the years say, why can't we get this guy in? Let's get that guy in. I'm not having it. I'm just not having it. You can't sit there and say, you know,
I've got that Jerome because Jerome wants to say something.
No, but the thing is, we keep going on about tech. Yeah, it's going to make things better. Spurs have a good starting 11. One good starting 11. Fringe players, rubbish. Brentford have been playing with a starting 11 for the whole season. And yet, we are talking about 33 defeats over 2 seasons without going in Europe or anything. And we are saying he's going to make our starting 11 that we know is already good. It's going to make them better. But what about when he gets injuries? What is going to make all those fringe players? The same rubbish fringe players that can't play under any manager is going to make them better? How? How is he going to make them better? How is he going to make us compete on both fronts? And we're going to say, this guy has lost 33 games, one less than Ange Postecoglou, is going to make those fringe players better.
I can say it quite easily.
I agree with Dave that there is context to everything.
No,
okay?
I can take an argument apart just straight away quickly, right? With no disrespect, right? A coach, right? Someone that's going to coach players, play them in the right positions, not play inverted wing backs, right? Play maybe what the players are actually good at doing as well. You know what I mean? So it's like this is what a manager, a coach is going to do, right? Which is, by the way, yeah, we should be shameful, right? We should be ashamed of ourselves, Daniel Levy, by the way, because why is Bournemouth and bloody Brentford and Southampton finding managers out of nowhere, right? When I can find managers out my right hand, right, in Europe that can coach, you know what I mean, that are better than Ange Postecoglou all day long. You know what I mean? So, you know, so I'm sorry, I don't understand that. You know what I mean? Sorry, I don't agree with that, Jerome. You know what I mean? Respectfully.
Wait.
You know what I mean? You know how I am. You know what I mean?
You're saying, yeah, I know what you're saying. But you're saying coach, right? Ange Postecoglou had Jedinak and Ryan Mason under him as coach. Ryan Mason.
But he decided not to have his
So we are saying that the guy that's under Ange Postecoglou, Ryan Mason, that we can't get rid of now, we've only got rid of him now, but was also under Conte, is a good coach. He's the one that should be coaching for our defensive, coaching our guys to be moving forward under Ange Postecoglou. So we're saying that this guy was good. He had a good coaching team. With
I don't agree with that. Because he didn't bring his own coaching staff, though. He didn't bring his own coaching staff. That was the thing. A lot of people.
Conte was the same. Conte couldn't bring his coaching staff. Conte couldn't bring his coaching staff. There was so much things about that.
He bought most of it. He did bring most of it, though, Jerome. He did bring
but
most of it.
He still had Ryan Mason as his coaching staff. The same thing as Ange Postecoglou.
I like it known Ange didn't bring anyone from Celtic. He didn't bring anyone. Jedinak came from Aston Villa. He came from Aston Villa years ago. He didn't bring a single manager from or coach from Celtic. He doesn't bring his coaching staff. He never has, never will.
Actually, that's come back to life.
Yeah, If
even if he wanted to, Levy won't allow it. He didn't let Conte do it. Why would he let Ange?
That's where he should have not took the opportunity, though. You know, because at the end of the day, it's what's come back to bite him. Look, Alex, me and you had a lengthy conversation when we were over there about the coaching staff in general not being good enough or required, you know, standard. You know, and at the end of the day, if Postecoglou knows that he's got a style of football that he wants to get across that is out of the norm, so to speak, you got to bring player coaches that know how to coach it from the off. You know, and that maybe has been to his detriment.
That's the point I'm making. He didn't bring his coaches. There was one guy in Celtic, even though Chris Davis was actually a very good coach, by the way, because he was at Leicester City. And I know Leicester City, when they had Brendan Rodgers and they had their coaching staff there, when they won the FA Cup, he was actually very influential there as well. But I know there was one coach that he had at Celtic, assistant coach, that he really liked, I think, from what I heard, and he didn't bring him over for some reason. So, but I think that was it to his detriment. I've got to be honest, because, like I said, it's like, you know, there wasn't any coaching for me. Like I said, I've not been to Tottenham since that Man United game, which when we did the protest, and I just got wound up because I was seeing the same thing, and that was after a week of training, and I was sitting there saying, well, after everything you've gone through, knowing so full well that this has not worked, you've not worked on this. And I was like, no, I'm sorry, I'm done with this. I didn't go to a game since. So, yeah, that was it for me.
Alex, at some point in the season, Ange literally came out and said, we're not training. We're resting. All we're doing is recovery. But they couldn't train. They had like 8 first-team players fit for a game in 2 days. They didn't have time to train. They could only rest. They needed to recover. And they kept doing that. And 2 games for 4 competitions. I don't know what you're expecting out of Ange to pull a hat a rabbit out of a hat, as I say. Like, he can't do that. You're giving him a squad that falls apart, and the backups aren't good enough. The backups are just not good enough.
I'm glad you said backups. I'm glad you said backups, because I don't do backups, and that's what we did in the transfer window. Backups. You know what I mean? Because I said already, if I want backups, I want bloody Harry Winks back. You know what I mean? All those players, Emerson Royale, that everyone's jumping up and down about. You know what I mean? Yeah, so I'm glad you said backups.
You jumped up and down about Harry Winks and Ollie Skip. You know, you can pull people out for that, but I'll just pull you out for what you know what I mean? Like.
So I apologise to you, David.
No, I get it. But don't sit there.
Apologise to you on that one. So let's not go there.
No, but I get that. But don't sit there and say people jumping up and down for Emerson when you've previously jumped up and down for Winks and Skip. You know what I mean?
Okay, but there's no point of going on about that, because that is done and dusted now. Because I apologised to you and I said you were right about it, and that's it. That was a years ago now, Dave. Stop waiting on that one. You know what I mean? Sorry, I'm sorry. David hasn't screwed me for so long, guys. So he wants to have a little bite because he wants to get the best of Mr. Boxer.
No, I'm not.
But you know, I'm just saying this is a love and hate relationship.
I'm just saying, you know, you're sitting there berating people for jumping up and down about Emerson Royale, but you used to jump up and down about Skips and Winks, you know. So like, it's like you can berate one people and pretend you've got standards, but I also don't forget you perpetrated Winks and Skips, you know. So if you're going to ridicule people, I'll also pull out the people that you've praised that haven't been good enough for Tottenham in the past. But look, anyone else want to come in and maybe look, where do we go next, guys? You know, who do you want to see come in the door next? I think forgot about Soren. He's been so quiet down there. I'm not used to having him so quiet. You're in morning, Soren. Oh, not Soren. Fucking yeah, Soren's back.
I find it hilarious that we've got people here moaning about Ange, and the same people were saying the only success is winning a trophy. And we've won a trophy, and all of a sudden we're not successful anymore. And it's just double standards all the way around. And it's just hilarious. Look, we've had two halves of a season. We've had the most successful manager that we've had for 41 years, winning a European Cup. And we've had the worst manager in the same season, giving us the most losses. And now the same people are wanting Thomas Frank in, who think he's only lost 1 less game than Ange Postecoglou. But yet we think he's going to come in and be the saviour of our club. And I just find it absolutely hilarious that we want higher standards, but yet we want Thomas Frank. And we go on about, Ange Postecoglou's absolutely shit. He don't know what he's doing. Well, hang on a minute. What did fucking Conte do? What did Jose Mourinho do? They did absolutely jack shit, and they're the saviors. That they're the best managers in the world. Well, they've been outdone by Ange Postecoglou. Ange Postecoglou, he's only managed in Mickey Mouse leagues. He's only managed Celtic. He's only done Japan. Well, he's actually managed in the Premiership now, and he's won a European Cup. So it's about time some of these people realise all the crap they've been spouting for the last 2 years. Well, he's actually proved you wrong in one sense, but he has proved you right in the other, because he was absolutely shit in the Premier League. But how many times have we, as fans, sat here and said, we're fed up of a manager disregarding the cups? It's all about the Premiership. Well, this season we've done the exact opposite, and you're still frigging moaning. What do you actually want from the club? Yeah, I sat there last season and said, I want top 4 and a cup. If I remember right, Alex, you sat there and said, don't care where we come as long as we win a cup. Well, we've won a cup.
So come back to that absolute waffle. Firstly, just to say something. I didn't expect to be 17th with 38 points. 38 points. No, because they're still speaking. The 38 points, right, and the worst points per game, right. So this is the point. Well, I said I need a coach. I'm not saying I want Thomas Frank, no, but he's a coach, so I can't moan if we get him in. He's a coach, yeah, right. Okay, he dismissed the league halfway through the season, even though we're, technically, well, I don't think we're relegation. I don't think could get relegated, but you know what I mean. It's just like that's disgusting. You know what I mean? So, like, I'm sorry, the guy has got the worst stats than ever as a top man. He's the worst Tottenham manager. Yes, you're right about him being the most successful manager. By the way, I said on my channel, I said I was wrong about him winning his second season. I own that, absolutely right. But no, I'm not gonna be go say I should be sorry about what I said about him. No, because he's the worst manager I've ever seen. He's the worst manager I've ever seen. I've said to you, I said, oh, this is the last point I want to make before you come back. The last point I want to make is that, yeah, I did say he's the most successful manager, which I said on the channel, by the way, right? I did give him credit because he did win the cup. That's it, yes, right? But sorry, that's it for me, right? We need to move on, right? He didn't use any of the youngsters, by the way. He only used Burval and Archie going to a point, but look what happened towards the end of the season. He ruined his confidence, right? He did improve Spence because Spence was doing it for himself, right? There was young players there that he hasn't used. He just messed them up, put them on loan, right? So for me, yeah, you've got to move forward. I'm not saying that Thomas Frank's the answer, no. But at the moment, at least we might have a coach that is going to improve playing, which he's done at Brentford. And Bomo is because of Thomas Frank. Whistler is Whistler because of Thomas Frank, right? No one knew about them, right? But Thomas Frank made them better, right? He made Solskjaer better. He made loads of players better, and that's what I want for my coach. And that's all I've got to say. Back to you, Dave. I'm done.
You're overlooking the impact that Brentford scouting model. It's the same as Brighton's. They're two owners that own a gambling company together and used whatever they used to come up with the odds to help them identify players. And whatever methods they're using, they get a lot of their signings right. And I think you're being disingenuous just putting it all on Frank. Yes, to an element, Frank has made them a good, solid team, and he's made a lot of players that clubs are buying for bigger money. But Tottenham used to do that. Tottenham brought in the likes of Luka Modric, Gareth Bale, all these young players. We used to go around identifying these sort of players and stuff like that. At the end of the day, it's not all down to Thomas Frank. Their scouting model is set up so that they have very little misses in the transfer window. And if anyone thinks I'm talking horseshit, just type it in on YouTube. It's widely available.
Oh yeah, and by the way, just like Brighton, their system is not necessarily set up to support one coach. They can easily replace their coaches with guys that are in their system to step in and hit the ground running. So in some aspects, it's not even really about Thomas Frank.
I do want to just stress though, by the way, just quickly, I don't think any one of us here is degrading Thomas Frank. I think what I've always said is, if we're sacking Ange Postecoglou because of his CV, because he can't compete on multiple fronts, and because of league losses, Thomas Frank ain't the right guy to bring us forward. I'm sorry. Like, I'm okay with changing manager, and I'm okay with going with a new direction. But give me a manager I believe in. You give me Thomas Frank, I'm not going in there with any expectations of winning anything next season. And I should be, because that's the expectations I've placed on every manager coming in here. It's even the expectations I've placed on Ange Postecoglou coming in here. The ultimate end of the game is to win something. And what I'm trying to portray is Frank is a sideways step, and it's just as big a scandal going into the season as you were with Postecoglou. And like, to my point, as well, Minch, people that aim all this at Postecoglou are willing to let it all slide and promote Thomas Frank. I mean, what are we doing here? My whole aim is for Tottenham Hotspur to be successful, and I want to see the right way forward. And I don't believe Thomas Frank is that. And I just think the whole Thomas Frank thing is hypocritical, considering the expectations placed on Ange Postecoglou, Conte, and Jose Mourinho at this football club. Why are we going to place them expectations and then lower them for another manager coming in? Surely, if we want the best outcome for Tottenham, keeping them expectations and getting a manager that ticks all them boxes and the concerns you have with Postecoglou is the right way forward. Frank is a sidestep, and that's what I'm getting at. I'm not degrading the guy, and if he walks in this door tomorrow, I'll be the first one to sit there and say, guys, you've got to give it a chance. I'm okay. I'm big enough. I'd share my opinions, but if it comes in, I'll sit there and go, no problem. I'll give it a chance, and I'll give him a fair crack at the whip. But I'm saying I think it's a sidestep. I'm not ripping apart a guy. I'm not degrading them. I just don't think it's the right choice moving forward.
It's the same thing. It is the same thing that happened with Poch. He took us to a Champions League final where we should have been kicking on and saying back the guy and let him rebuild his team because he was having an aging team. What do? We sack him to bring Jose Mourinho, bringing us Dross, very defensive football. And now what do? We do the same thing. The guy that won us the trophies and say, let's kick on from here. What do? We sack him and we bring somebody else who's going to go. We're not really too sure what he's going to do with us, but he's a coach. Okay. What's going to give us again? It's going to be 5 years again of dross, of not knowing what we do, rinse and repeat, changing managers and over and over and over. So what's the point?
Can I jump in here?
If we bring Thomas Frank in, how long are people giving him to if he's 10th, 11th in the league next season? How long before people are going to start saying we don't want him? Or how long are you giving him? Because we're not going to win a trophy.
Till Christmas.
Probably.
Yeah, we have until Christmas.
That all these fans that have called for Postecoglou to go are the ones that now are going to get what they wanted. He's gone. We're going to get another manager in. We've got to start all over again, and you've got a team now that'll have to redo to his system. Which, he could come in. He could be very successful, and I hope to God he is. I hope we go and win the league with him, or we win another cup with him. But I don't see us winning another trophy now because the club has now proved that the only thing that is important is top four, basically. It doesn't matter about the cups. How many times have we been in cups and we've cracked them off? We've put a weakened team in because it's all about the Premiership. Everybody wanted a trophy. We've got a trophy. We've sacked the league off, and all of a sudden, that's the wrong thing to do. We were never going to get top four or top six or top eight by Christmas. It had gone. So the most sensible thing is go win a cup. Well, we've won a cup. It's not good enough. You all want top four again, whatever. Well, top four. And Alex, praising you on this one, you always said top four was a trophy. I always sat there and said, I want top four. Well, all of a sudden now, fans, and I'm not saying you, Alex, in this bit, but all of a sudden now it's more important to get top four than a trophy. It's not good enough, a European Cup. Well, what do you actually want? Because next season we're not going to win a cup. We might finish in a European spot. Who knows? But it's just madness, absolute madness. And for all you people out there that are saying, "Oh well, we want rid of Postecoglou. We want a proper coach and proper manager." Well, we're about to get another manager and he might be brilliant, he might be great, but he's unproven, really. He's not won anything. Postecoglou came in, he'd got 14 trophies before he came to us. Oh, it's all tin pot league, it's all this and that. Well, he's done it in a proper league now, and he's done a European Cup. But we're going to go for a manager instead that's got no pedigree of winning.
That's my huge concern. But in fairness, Shawnee Maddox, I think he's wanted to come in there for a while. But I do agree with you. Like, this is my whole point. Like, I'm okay with rolling the dice. But let's bring in a manager of pedigree. Let's bring in a manager that has a bit of a CV behind him, not a guy that's a total gamble. And I think that's what Thomas Frank is, to be quite frank. And I think be careful what you wish for. I've always said, you keep sacking managers, you're going to find yourself further down the league. You sell your best players, you're going to find yourself further down the league. This isn't just on Ange Postecoglou. Selling Harry Kane, not replacing him properly, is a massive part of this problem. Sonny declining, not having the right replacement in place for him declining, is also a massive part of this problem. The medical department being in shit, also a massive part of this problem. Johan Lang only being able to sell the Premier League dream and not the Tottenham dream to players was also a huge part of this problem. Not just the manager. Anyone that thinks a manager's going to walk in here and just get Tottenham going like that without changing all these things, you're sadly mistaken. And I hope people take this on board with the new guy coming in and ask for these things to be rectified so that you actually get a fair chance. Sorry, Shani, go on.
Oh, yeah, Dave, I was on those last points. Again, I think most people agree with you. And I think what we saw when they started chopping off board members, firing or supposedly firing Mudd, I don't know if they've made an official announcement yet, is that the club is starting to make some of those fundamental or at least shift some of those things. Paratici's coming back in. It's all part of a group of changes that were necessary. But I don't think anyone can deny Ange could not get this squad or Ange ball to work in any capacity. And if you don't think that watching Spurs this season was more painful than pretty much anything you've seen on a football pitch in at least a decade, you're lying to yourself. Again, the squad was not moving in the right direction under Ange in terms of general performances. Yes, Ange won a trophy, not playing Ange ball. And again, he did a brilliant job there, and that maybe is a reason to have rolled the dice on him. But there were so many reasons to also roll the dice on someone else that, again, we have to see who they bring in. But again, the squad wasn't moving in the right direction. Ange was not getting potential, or again, he wasn't aligned with the transfers that we were making and what seemed to be the new club vision for what they wanted going forward. So again, I think if we didn't fire him now, we'd be having the same conversation in December, where we'd be sitting at roughly the same circumstances of an okay start and then everything kind of falling apart as the amount of games and fronts we're competing in picks up. So again, I just don't see him as having progressed us much further. I think that trophy was as far as Ange could have gotten under the squad, the setup, his own coaching ability. And now it's demanding the club does better. We need to bring in those experienced players, but I don't think Ange was going to build a squad to compete on multiple fronts. I don't think that was in his set of abilities.
Can I ask you a question, Sean?
Yes.
Sorry, I just want to ask a question to Sean first. With the full squad, with Ange's full squad, with his back four of Romero, Van de Ven, Udogie, and Porro, how many games did we lose with those back four in the league? How many games did we lose when we were all fit?
I think the stat is 3 losses out of 15 games. The one point I would make is I think Eddie actually looked up some numbers. I don't think you can count as full back four. I mean, Udogie and Spence are roughly interchangeable. They've both had ins and outs, which adds another 3 losses. I think one of them was the game that both our Van de Ven and Romero got injured. So it's at least 5 losses. But again, the problem is the midfield has never been functional or balanced kind of the whole time. The attack has really been struggling, like as a whole system.
That's not his fault, though, the attack.
No,
Let's be
well,
Sean, to add to your point, just to add to your point, Sean, right? Just to add to your point, that this back four, right, to go against Jerome's point about the back four, right? That back four has lost against I think they lost against Ipswich or Crystal Palace, I think it was, right? And they gave him their first win. And also, they haven't beat anybody in the top six, I think, as well. I think there was that within those wins, didn't beat anybody in that top six. So just to put that out there.
I'm pretty sure we beat City. We beat a City.
Not with our back four. Not with our back four. We had
the only
injuries.
other thing is conceding kind of the same goal to a long ball on the flank, attacking that fullback. That's a system issue. Regardless of who's in the back four, we've been ripped apart there too many times. Like, we were lucky to get past was it PSV, whatever the Dutch team we played?
No,
like, and just shanked a bunch of shots. Like, we were like a few inches from probably losing that game and crashing out.
Hang on
I'm
a
not
minute.
saying that
you say that though, but you say that. How many times did we play in a game where we absolutely battered the other team, but they scored one goal and we lost 2-1 or 1-0, and we were the best team? It's the same with whatever you say. Well, it can go both ways. But going back to the point with the defenders, it wasn't so much whether Udogie or Spence was playing or Porro. It was the two centre. It's your Van der Ven and your Romero. Don't forget, half the time we had Gray in there with Dragosin. You know, absolutely terrible two centre defender. You've got to look at it. Look, nobody can argue that the Premier League has been anywhere near good enough for a Tottenham Hotspur team. Absolutely diabolical. But you've also got to look at it in there and say, look, it's not the amount of injuries we've had. It's the players that were injured. Van der Ven, Romero, Udogie, Son played with injuries, and Bentancur wasn't back to his best. Maddison. These are all our starting spine of a team. Vicario out for however long. And you cannot tell me that any team out there could cope with that amount of injuries to their first team. Now, look, I'm not saying that it's the injuries that have caused the Premier League absolute diabolical performances, but it does add to it. Now, everybody, you know, we all sat there and said, oh, when they come back, but everybody expected the first game that these players came back, they were going to be all of a sudden better. They're not, because they take time to come back. But look, the point is, we can blame Ange and we can blame but when it actually comes down to it, you've got to look at the board and Levy to say he's the one really at fault, because he did not give Postecoglou a good enough backup set of players. So when these first team players were injured, we had the right kind of players to come in.
I can't blame Daniel Levy, actually, to be honest. You saw him. I can't blame Daniel Levy, because Daniel Levy, I needed my Daniel Levy back, to be honest with you, because in the Daniel Levy was sacked in December, and there was the news, well, in the grapevine, little birdie told me, because strategy was still at the works, right? Strategy told Daniel Levy to sack him in December.
Yeah,
right?
But Alex,
so let's be honest here. He's a very lucky boy. He's a very lucky man to still be in the job. And the reason, and let's be honest here, he kept Postecoglou through everybody, most of the fan base that turned on him, right? And then he kept him so much that he got us a European trophy. So let's be honest here. We can give praise to Daniel. We can give praise. No, we're going to do this. We're going to do this because the truth hurts again. And Postecoglou gets the credit, but also Daniel Levy gets the credit as well. Because if it acts at the top, we have to always give it. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So sorry, we're not doing this. We're not doing this.
Alex, that has got nothing to do.
Let me respond, right? I get what you're saying there, Alex, but at the end of the day, what you failed to take into account When you were calling for Ange Postecoglou to be sacked and another manager to come in, no other manager was ever signing on the dotted line with the amount of injuries we've had. None. You don't think they were out there sourcing around speaking to people? Of course they were. No one would attach their name to the shit show we had with the injuries we had and everything else. That's why Ange Postecoglou was kept in a job. Does that deserve praise? I don't think so. I think it was a case where he had no one else. I think it's a case where he had no one else to turn to, and he knew he couldn't turn to Ryan Mason because fans would have went absolutely apoplectic. So I don't think he deserves praise for keeping him a job. I think he had no choice but to keep him in the job. Where I think he deserves criticism is not he's bringing in Johan Lang and letting him conduct windows underneath Ange Postecoglou. That didn't help us. We all knew going into this season we needed experience. We went and brought you. We all knew this January we needed experience. The only player we brought in of experience was Danzo. You're the two of
David, that's you're making things up. I'm sorry, that's not. Sorry,
what you made up?
You can't tell me.
Let me finish. I'll let you speak. Let me finish. So you're sitting there. This is made up. Kinski, how old is he?
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about.
How old is Matisse Tal?
I'm not talking about that though.
How old is Bergvall? How is any of what I just said then made up?
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that you said that because there was no managers available, coaches available, that's why they didn't sack Postecoglou. That's not nonsense. That's absolute nonsense.
It's common sense. No, it's not.
Absolute nonsense.
It's common sense.
Who would have come, Alex?
Alex, no manager.
There's Graham Potter available, bro. There's Graham Potter available.
No manager has
There's other managers available. I'm not saying there was the answer. I'm saying to you, there was coaches available. There were coaches available.
It's only logical if you're a manager and you're being given a project. You ain't going to walk in there when a lot of your best players are injured and the club's in chaos mid-season. If you're a manager of a certain quality, that's just logical. Like you can say it's bollocks, but it's just logical. But what you're saying is bollocks. Daniel Levy kept them, even though the pressure was on to sack him last January, and all the evidence was there to sack him last January. Daniel Levy Daniel Levy decided to miraculously keep him when he sacked Jose Mourinho, when he sacked Nuno, and when he sacked Pochettino. Absolute bollocks. The reason why he didn't sack him is because no manager worth their sort was ever signing on dotted line.
Oh, that's no rubbish, David. You know it. You know it. That is absolute. This is the worst excuse you've come out with, David. I love this. I've missed you so much, David, because you just talk with so much nonsense that I can just batter it away so much. I love you so much.
Let me finish. Look,
I love you so much.
Let me finish. First of all, you can say it's nonsense, okay? I wasn't the one sitting there for years going, forget about the league, bring me a trophy, and then sit there and go, all of a sudden the league counts.
I didn't say that.
Let me finish. Stop interrupting.
Yes, you did.
Okay? Stop interrupting me. You said that, or you said that in streams and years gone by, and you pivoted this year. So you want to talk about speaking bollocks? There you are. Second of all, yeah, it's an assumption I'm making, but an assumption based on logic. If I'm a manager and I'm looking at a football club and they come to me and say, I want you to come in and take this ship over, and I'm going, okay, who have I got available? And I want to implement my style of football, my play and everything else, and all my best players, and I've got the injuries that I've got going on, knowing that even when these injuries are coming back, it's going to take them a while to get up to speed. I am never, ever signing my name on that dotted line. That's just logical. You can call it bollocks, but that's logical. And I can guarantee you wouldn't sign on that dotted line either. So there. And now let me take a few comments. Let me take a few comments. I've listened to everybody. I haven't took any comments. Let me take a few. Adrian Brown says, my only sub channel I will still subscribe to with the Irish Hotspur. Keep up the good work, Dave and Jack and Dave. Really appreciate that, Adrian Brown. Dean Bourne says, everyone is emotionally attached to Big Ange. That's why it's hard to see him go. But ultimately, Ange's style of play isn't working in the Prem. Change was always needed. Big up, Dave. Come on, you Spurs. No, look, that's absolutely fair enough. You know, I've said all along, you know, the style of play coming out at the end of this season, what's it going to be next season? And I've always took into account the league defeats. But look, what I've always tried to maintain along is I've never been on this what would you call emotional based, like Alex has said, any manager will do better. Because in reality, that's just not how football works, and it doesn't work like that. And I've heard Alex say that when we were sacking Jose Mourinho. Nuno walked in. Did he do better? No. I heard him when they say sack Nuno and next manager will get better. Did they get better? No, they ended up costing them a job. And then sack Conte, another manager would do better to a large degree. Winning a trophy is probably a slight bit better, but at the end of the day, it still cost him his job. So that narrative doesn't compute either, that just sack him and anybody else would do. At the end of the day, my love is for Tottenham Hotspur, and I want what's best for this club going forward. And if I don't see Frank being that guy, I'll be that guy. Just like I was on the unpopular side when we were selling Harry Kane. You know, people like Sean says Ange has to get better out of your front line. But when we were selling Harry Kane, people like you, Sean, were also on with me going, Dave, Ange just needs a front three to work with. He will make it work. That's the way he manages and stuff like that. So, you know, how can we pivot from that to going, he's got to make it work? At the end of the day, when are we going to realize quality actually matters? You bring in quality. You don't have high manager turnover. You win more games of football. It's that easy. Quality matters. But big up, Dean. Look, I get it. You know, and like I said, I'm okay changing manager. I just want to see a proper name put forward. Not a guy that's fought Premier League survival. HD Sharp says he played Sonny out of position. I mean, how did he play Sonny out of position? Most fans at the time wanted Son to play striker. I told everybody he's not a striker, he's a left winger, and he played him back out to left wing. So if the fans got what they asked for, then don't say he's played him out of position. It's what you've asked for. We've got Hotspur TV says injuries is an excuse. He should have dropped the high line if Davies and Gray were playing. Look, Hotspur, I'm sorry. Again, injuries isn't an excuse. You play in any team. You go into any job. If your best asset or your best worker is out, it's going to take a hit. And we talk about dropping the high line. What? We're dropping the high line for Ben Davies to prove how long he hasn't been good enough here? Let's be brutally honest. He played a low line under Conte and Joseph for how many years? Every game. How did he do there? So we can sit here and say the line is the excuse. Again, let's actually start talking about the quality of the player we're asking some of these guys.
Dave,
Let
really
me finish.
quick.
Sam says the Ange sexuals are so embarrassing listening to them make excuses for Ange. Mate, he was bloody poor, 17 and 22 defeats with a wide open defence. Take your point. But what I will say is everyone that was against Ange was also proven wrong. Let's not forget that. Let's keep some balance here. And then we've also got this, and, you know, they're finding it very hard to admit they were wrong as well. And then we've also got this from Paddy D. Big up, Paddy. Hopefully you're keeping well. Andrew's a good guy. You can respect what he stands for, but he had to go, no question. We can't turn a blind eye to how bad we've been for 18 months. Leave emotions behind and look at the facts. And look, absolutely fair point there, Paddy D. Absolutely fair point. But I think what some people may be holding on to as well is the fact that he has delivered a trophy. And you deliver that trophy, sometimes it can help you kick on. Now, I know this like Eric Ten Hag, where it didn't help him kick on and stuff like that. But look, like I said, I'm okay with the manager change. Just don't tell me we're making a manager change and promoting Marco Silva, Iriola, or fucking Thomas Frank, because I will lose my mind. At the end of the day, my whole aim is being successful. If we're sacking a guy that's delivered a trophy, you bring in another guy that can take this forward and give you them ambitions heading into next season. What I'm not prepared to do is bring in a manager and sit there and go, oh, just 8th in the league and no cup runs is good enough, because we'll all be crying and pulling our hair out next season, arguing the contrary to what we're arguing today. Believe me. But big up, Paddy D. I think you're making an absolute fair point. We'll keep going for another few minutes, guys. I'll let everyone have another say, and then I am going to end off and try and watch some of this Ireland game. But go ahead. We'll start with Eddie. Eddie, you haven't spoken in a while. We'll work our way around the panel.
Look, to end this off, I just hope it's not Thomas Frank. Like, seriously, I hope it's a better manager than Thomas Frank and Marco Silva, because we need to kick on, and those managers won't kick us on. Like, in all seriousness, they are mid-table managers with styles of play that are suited to staying up in the Prem. Not pushing for a trophy. They're suited to playing in the Prem. People are calling Thomas Frank a brilliant tactician. Couldn't be Ange. Couldn't be Ange with the tactics given to him. Don't go calling Thomas Frank a brilliant tactician. He was given the tactics to beat us and couldn't do it. So I want to hear the fact that he's a brilliant tactician. He's not. He's an average manager who's done well to keep the team up in the Prem, but that's all his style of play is suited for. Not for managing a big squad. Not for managing in Europe. Couldn't even win in the Danish league. And you get mad at Postecoglou who winning in everywhere he goes. I'm sorry, I'm just not having it. And look, it's just what it is. So we move on. I'm a Spurs fan through. Yes, I'm also a Postecoglou fan, but I'm a Spurs fan, and I'll keep supporting this club. I'll keep watching this club. And look, if Frank is the man to come through the door, like Dave, I'll back it, but I'll have probably a short leash with it, because I just don't want to fall into the trap of not winning another trophy for the next 5-10 years. Like that would be horrific. So we need to kick on now. And we're going to lose top world class players from the senior stacking. Romero's going to want out. We know we need to sell to buy this season, especially with the payout we're doing for Thomas Frank and for Ange Postecoglou. That's 14 million down the drain with a manager change. We need to sell to buy this season. Romero is probably going to go. We might be selling Paul, and we might be selling Basuma. Like there's going to be big sales. We're rebuilding the squad. The squad is going to need a rebuild. So I'm not expecting a lot next season, truthfully. If we get back into the top half, I'll be happy. If we maybe push for a trophy, I'll be very happy. But look, I'm expecting about a top half finish from this team and from Thomas Frank if he does come in, truthfully. And honestly, especially when we lose Romero of that sort of world-class caliber. Like, guys, what are we doing here?
No, fair enough. Just quickly, we'll let box office in then and work our way around the panel. Drew says the big box office is right. The Ange sector need to get over it or follow him out. Look, what I will say is the only reason why you are celebrating the Europa League and could celebrate Europa League is because some of the Ange sexuals kept faith. So you can keep going at them. At the end of the day, you wouldn't be celebrating the Europa League without it. So, again, just a bit of context to that. But Alex, go ahead.
Just to go back to your points about the fact that you couldn't find a manager. West Ham were able to find a manager in Graham Potter. Wolves were able to find a manager in what they got who finished above us, by the way, when they were how many points ahead of us, by the way, how many points below us, by the way. Manchester United were able to find a manager, Amorim, by the way, as well, halfway through the season as well. So again, I don't know where this excuse is. Again, about getting managers in halfway through the season. You know what I mean? We could have done that halfway through the season in December.
Why didn't we do it
Man United were able to do it. West Ham were able to do it. Wolves were able to do it. You know what I mean? Even Southampton were able to do it. Leicester City were able to do it as well. So
we didn't have the injuries we had.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because all top managers. All top teams are able to find coaches. There are coaches out there. I can name you all of them at the top of my hand right now. And that's what I'm saying. You know what I mean? This is what I do. I come on the show, rattle people, and they come back at me. But this is the point I made.
No, you make yourself.
No, I don't. But anyway, moving on.
No, we're not moving on. I'm going to address what you said. No, I'm going to address what you said. It's my show. We're not moving on. I'm going to address what you said, right? At the end of the day, you sat there and you said, I'm speaking bollocks. You've mentioned every single club that didn't have the injuries we've had. And my whole point was we couldn't get a manager because of the injuries we had. So you haven't argued anything. You've argued what's in your own head. You haven't even argued what's in your own head. Honestly,
that is not true, David. And you know that's not true because you know that people are going to come back at you because you know that's not true. Because why is West Ham able to find a manager? Why was West Ham able to find a manager and they were below us? And even Everton were able to find a manager. So I'm sorry, this is absolute nonsense.
Alex, what have any of those teams won this season?
Yeah, but that's not the point. That's not the point I'm making. That's not the point I'm making, though. This is the thing. This is the point I'm making. This is what I'm saying. Sorry, this is the point I'm making. And by the way, this is fine. By the way, because we're all passionate. By the way, so this is passionate. By the way, so I'm not having a go at you, sorry, because somebody made the point about everyone being happy with each other. Sorry, we're here to be football fans and to say it how it is right now because we're on stream to make a show of it, make it box office with David. You know what I mean? But the point I'm making is though, well, I gave you credit by the way, David. You know what I mean? Acknowledge that. But the point is though, right, is that the managers that, and I'm not talking about the trophy, right? They're not talking about the trophy, winning that trophy. No, yes, we did win the trophy, and like I said, that's why I gave Daniel Levy credit. That's why I gave Daniel Levy credit. Right, because he's kept with the manager through very hard times, which is what I said. If he gives him credit for what he's done, but there were other managers available. Whether you don't rate them or not, there were managers available. There was coaches available that we could have got in December, and practically would have found managers. Right, would have found managers for us. Right, so the fact is, we kept our manager, and that's it for me. So that's what I'm saying.
Had we changed
but what Barnett would have done? He was not there.
But if we'd have changed the manager, Alex, you can basically guarantee we would not have won a trophy this season. It would have
based on what? Well, we had based on what?
Like, just because you go and change a manager doesn't mean you're going to suddenly carry on the same way. Look, everything would have changed. Priorities would have changed. And you bring in a different manager. We could have brought in Amarin. Well, we've just beat Amarin in the bloody final. He only finished a place above us or whatever it is.
Just beat him in the final, by the way. They dominated us.
We can say we still won. We still won.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that.
And had Amarin been in charge of us, we might not have got to the final. Had Potter been in charge of us, we might not have got in the final. But we might have finished 8th or 9th or 10th in the league, but we might not have got to the final. So it's okay saying change the manager at Christmas, but the fact that we didn't change the manager has won us a European Cup. And I know
I think a lot of people could have done the same thing that Ange has done.
Don't know that.
I'm sorry.
The thing is,
the same managers, because Amarin had a worse season than us.
It would not have panned out the same way.
But why did Amarin do the same thing that we did? And it's supposedly had the worse squad than us, then, Soren. Why is it? Why is it then? Why is Amarin Manchester United? Because not just Tottenham, Man United was in that final as well. So why is it? And they had a harder run, by the way, harder teams, by the way. What is it? They had I can't remember the teams, but they had Bilbao and Lyon and somebody else as well, which I can't remember.
Yeah, they got Alex. They had a harder running, but they didn't beat us, who had the easier running. So what does that prove?
No, I'm just making the point.
We still won the final.
No, I'm not. But the point I'm making is you're saying that none of the managers could have not got to the final like Ange. Right? I'm making the point.
No, Alex, stop. I didn't say they couldn't. I said they probably wouldn't have because the priorities would have changed.
I don't agree with that. I say that what they would have done possibly is maybe manage to score better and maybe put us in a better position in the league, which people can forget. We have to get revenue as well from the league position. Revenue as well. You know what I mean? There's revenue that you earn from the league position as well. You know what I mean? That people completely forget. That.
But we've won that by getting in the Champions League.
Yeah, but that's fine. That's fine. But why? Okay, fair enough then. But so we got to do this another day. And Jerome, by the way, because we got to do this another day.
But it's like if you say it for argument's sake, say you're an athlete and you're a good runner, and you've got a pair of trainers on that you do exceptionally well, but they're getting a bit worn, so you go buy a new pair. Doesn't guarantee that you're going to carry on the same thing. Changing your manager halfway through the season will change one dynamic but alter another. It's the way things happen. Now, had we sacked Ange at the beginning of the season or whatever, you could basically guarantee this season would not have finished in the same way because it's just the way the world works. Now, we might have done better in the league. We might have got top 4. We might have done Champions League that way. We might have done better in the semi-final against Liverpool. But things would not have worked out exactly the same as they have because things have changed the dynamics. We could have kept Harry Kane. We might not be in the situation now. But the thing is, it doesn't matter now. The fact is, Ange's gone. Whatever manager comes in, we all have to get behind him. Full stop. Whether we agree with that signing or not. I didn't want Ange in the first place, but he was the manager of Tottenham Hotspur, which is my club. I backed him all the way to the end until today when he's gone. If Thomas Frank comes in, I don't want Thomas Frank. But if he comes in, I will back him as my manager. But the point is, by changing a manager halfway through the season, will change exactly how the season finishes. Everything changes, full stop. Now, yes, there were managers available. Potter was available, like you said. If we'd have got Potter in, half the bloody fan base would have been up in arms straight away. Never mind wait until the end of the season. No way good enough. But all of a sudden, no. Now, it doesn't matter what manager comes in as long as it's not Ange Postecoglou. Well, what happened to those standards of we want the best for our club? Thomas Frank is not the best option for our club. I hope he comes in and I hope he wins everything next season. But he won't. We all know that. And I hope he proves me wrong. I really do, because it's the club that matters at the end of the day. It's not who's in charge. It's not what he does. But the thing is, he'll come in. If he has a bad start, all those fans that wanted Ange Postecoglou out will be the same with Thomas Frank.
Fair. Well, Jerome, Sean, anything else you want to say before I end off? Because I really do want to go and watch this Ireland game, boys. Ireland have just gone one up as well, so please make it quick and let me go and watch this game.
I can keep my points brief. Again, at this point, Ange is gone, and we kind of have to accept that, and now it's about who comes in next. Again, most of the media reports seem to be about Frank. I don't think anyone or a lot of people are Frank is their top choice. He's not my top choice, although I don't actually think he's as bad a choice as everyone makes out. Again, I think he's more suited to where the project that it looks like we're trying to make. Again, my top choice is whoever Paratici tells the club to go and get in his list of priorities. We need that unified vision. And again, if Frank is the top of Paratici's list, then Paratici has some plan in place. I think Frank can get a bit more in terms of coaching and developing the young players. My top choice is Xavi. If he comes in, it'll be great. If he doesn't come in, we'll back whoever comes in. And again, we still need to demand the club does better. We need to replace the med department, and we need to bring in higher quality transfers. But so again, there's a lot of problems that need a lot of solutions. But the one thing is, I don't think Ange was the best guy for the job going forward. And again, what I will say is, I think inevitably it turned out to probably be the right decision to keep him through the end of last season. He won the trophy, but that doesn't mean that he's the best guy going forward. So again, now it's all about looking and seeing what the club does. Yeah. We're constantly getting media speculation. 90% of the time it's wrong. So let's see who shows up, what the club officially announces, and then we can have this kind of discussion if we think they're the best person going forward.
No, absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on. I agree with that. Look, it's done now. We got to move forward, and try and get behind the next guy that comes in. You're absolutely spot on there. Jerome, last words with you, my man.
Yeah. For me again, yeah, it's done. It's done. He's gone. Can't complain. Can't say anything. But again, Tottenham made a huge mistake. Huge mistake again, where we should be kicking on. We regress again. Same mistake like we did with Pochettino. We're doing the same mistake here. We can complain as much as we want. We were saying 22 defeats, 17th in the league. Yeah. Say what you want, but you still want to say trophy. We still managed to get in Champions League. So if the board had backed in properly, we would have done a lot more better. But again, did not happen. And the next manager, whoever it is, well, I just hope for his sake, those players play for him, because like Nuno, player powers do count. Because if those players go down tool because of this, all said they like Ange very much, but if the new one comes in and they down tool, well, we are in for a long, painful season. So let's just wait for that.
Look, I think this debate is going to rage on for days to come, yeah. And even when they appoint a new manager, it's going to rage on forward. Look, what I will say is, I actually reached a point yesterday. I was like, I don't even care about the decision. Just give me one so we can plot a way forward. We've got it. There's no point in sitting here crying about spilt milk now. Anyone that's wanted to come on and have their say about whether we should keep them, they've had their say. It's done and dusted. Now we've just got to move forward and try and get behind whatever the direction is this football club is going to be in moving forward. Look, even if it's Thomas Frank, I have my doubts, and if he sits there and proves me wrong, I'll sit there and say, you know what, fair play. But I'm still going to get behind him and give an opportunity, even if it's not my preferred guy coming in. And hopefully, if there is anyone else out there that thinks similar to me, you will also do the same. And lastly, I know these debate shows and stuff like that, they generate a lot of comments, but sometimes some of them are just pointless. This person's a this person's that. You're not actually putting a comment on what's being spoke about or sharing your opinion. Keep it to yourself. No one wants to read it, and if you've got anything to say about any of the panel members on here, just keep it to yourself. At the end of the day, we're all Spurs fans. We all want the same outcome, and that is to win trophies. But guys, much love to you. Go and enjoy your weekend. I know Eugene, Rayman, I know you guys did want to come on. I do really want to go and watch the Ireland game. Been going 3 hours now. I will get up more streams up and running over the weekend. I'll reach out to you guys, send you an invite, and get you guys on. But guys, that's it. End of the Ange era is over and done with. He's delivered us Europa League trophy. We move. We wait to see who our next manager is. As always, come on, you Spurs. See you soon, everyone.
Spurs, European champs.